Because are you ready? It's time to showcase the vibrant tapestry of KZN's cultural heritage at the Simon Mabunu Sabele KZN Film and Television Awards, South Africa's ultimate celebration of cinematic excellence. In partnership with the SABC and KZN EDTA, we champion innovation, paving the way for the future of cinema. This year we go beyond imagination. Edit your 1-minute submissions because a call for entries is now open until the 28th of March 2024. For more information, visit www.kznfilm.co.za or follow us on our social platforms. Join the conversation using hashtag SSA24. KZN Film, our kingdom is your stage.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
There's been several important developments in the Middle East in the last few days, with Egypt's foreign minister, Sameh Shoukry, saying the US should spell out to Israel what the consequences of a full-scale military offensive into Rafah in Gaza would be. It comes after an important speech in the US last week in which the highest-ranked Jewish member of the US government, the Senator Chuck Schumer, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace and there should be a new election in Israel. Meanwhile, Israel has now responded to our government's request to the International Court of Justice for Israel to be forced to implement measures to stop children from starving in Gaza. Professor Mia Swart is a visiting professor of international law at the Wits Law School. Professor Swart, good morning.
Morning.
Firstly, the US has been more and more critical of Netanyahu, but is there any point in being critical if you don't do anything, if the US doesn't actually take steps against Israel?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and this is exactly what Egypt is noticing and responding to. The Egyptian foreign minister has very recently said that it's not enough for the US to be critical and for Biden to intervene in some way. They also have to make clear what the consequences are going to be if Israel doesn't respond to their demands. And the biggest demand now is that Israel should, refrain from a ground offensive in Rafah.
The Israeli response to our application at the International Court of Justice, and there's our request for provisional measures. It accuses us of basically making up the facts. Is there an independent assessment of the facts on the ground that the judges can look to?
Well, the judges will look at the reports of, for example, the UN itself, because we know that the ICJ is the top court in the UN system. So it will certainly take UN reports seriously. It will take even UNRWA reports seriously because UNRWA is also an arm of the UN. It will take Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all international, the major international NGOs report seriously. So there's definitely various sources they can look at, as well as just constant footage by credible media organizations such as BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, constantly on TV. So, Israel, cannot actually dispute the veracity of all those, the news put out by all those networks, all those NGOs.
So there's all of this international pressure from our government, from other governments on Israel to stop its offensive. In Israel itself, I suppose maybe there's a completely different understanding of what's happening, and maybe just a sense of hurt and pain after the Hamas attacks. So, are we looking at a situation where people are sort of talking past each other? In other words, for people in Israel, there's no way you can change their mind because of what they feel about what happened to them. And I'm sort of putting it like that because that's how they feel about it. This happened to us, therefore we must behave in this way, if you see what I mean.
Yes, there's certainly an element of that, and I think that the wounds caused by the 7th of October attack, run very deep, and it's understandable that people, are very angry, they want the hostages back, but the anger is also directed, the Israeli anger is also directed at Netanyahu himself. I think that increasingly the Israeli public is also recognizing that Netanyahu, isn't in good faith and isn't doing everything to get the hostages back. And that, the loss of life is vastly disproportionate. So I don't think that, Israelis are living in such a bubble that they cannot see this.
Professor Mia Swart, I think we lost the connection there. Thank you very much indeed. A visiting professor at the Wits, a visiting professor of international law at the Wits Law School. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
So Amazulu against Pirates.
The quarterfinal draw is in, and that's one that is buzzing at the moment. The defending champions, Pirates, drew Amazulu. It all happened in Randburg last night. The draw, the matchup is a replay of the 2022 MTN8 final, which was won 1-0 by Pirates. For the defending champions, Bucks, who are second place in the DStv Premiership, the draw against 11th place Usutu is a tough one. Six-time successive DStv Premiership champions Mamelodi Sundowns, who are seeking to win a domestic cup for the first time since lifting the 2021-2022 Nedbank Cup, they were drawn against the University of Pretoria FC side. TS Galaxy will meet Chipper United, and Stellenbosch FC host Supersport United in the other quarterfinal. Elsewhere, Nottingham Forest were docked 4 points for breaching Premier League financial rules, leaving them in the relegation zone. The Premier League said in a statement that Forest had admitted to breaching the profitability and sustainability rules threshold of 1.4 billion rand. They are the second top-flight team to be penalised for breaches this season after Everton were hit with a 10-point penalty in November, which was then reduced to 6 on appeal. Everton are still waiting to discover if they will be hit with another points penalty relating to a second charge. Now, Forest's punishment means the drop for them is into the bottom 3, 1 behind Luton and 4 adrift of Everton. Rugby news, skipper Marcel Coetzee says the Bulls are looking forward to building on their impressive home performances with victories against Dragons and Leinster in Europe. The Pretoria outfit faced the Dragons in Newport on Saturday when the URC resumes in round 12 before heading to Dublin to tackle the Irish Giants Leinster at the RDS Arena. Now, Jake White's Chargers are second on the standings after 8 victories and 3 defeats and travel overseas on the back of a 4-match winning streak in all competitions. Now, a significant decision has impacted South African hockey. The nation's men's and women's teams have withdrawn from the ongoing Africa Games in Ghana due to the substandard condition of the playing surfaces, raising serious safety concerns. South African sport officials, following advice from international guidelines, deemed the pitch unsuitable and hazardous for the athletes. Despite these setbacks, both teams have already qualified for the Paris Olympics 2024. Motorsport news, Mercedes have admitted they're working on solving fundamental issues with their W15 car after a disappointing start to the 2024 Formula One season. Having entered the new campaign with hopes of being Red Bull's nearest challengers, Mercedes failed to place a car in the top 4 in either Bahrain or Saudi Arabia as Max Verstappen led teammate Sergio Perez to dominant 1-2s. Lewis Hamilton, who has been outperformed by teammate George Russell in both races, finished 9th in Jeddah, and there's big changes that are required beyond the overhaul for these underperforming cars. And finally, cycling, the Australian outsider Nick Schultz won the opening stage of the Tour of Catalonia. We'll bring you these and other stories on Sunrise. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll hear from Joburg Water about the impact of the problems at the Aikenhof pumping station after what went wrong last night. So that coming with SFM leading the conversation. Stage 2 load shedding for the moment. Stage 2 all day is the forecast at 6:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe party. The ANC argues that there were procedural flaws in the way the party was registered by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawethu Mosri. Power has been restored to the suburbs that experienced power cuts around Johannesburg South last night. Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda says there was a power failure due to a lightning strike at the Eldorado Park substation, resulting in many areas being plunged into darkness. And US President Joe Biden has spoken to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time in a month to repeat his warning that a military operation in Rafah in southern Gaza would be a mistake. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Crash on Joburg's Mike Watt North at Xavier Street in the Monday area. Traffic very heavy already, backlogging into Uncle Charlie's. If you come off the N12 highway, heading through Dipcliffe and then onto the Mike Watt and Uncle Charlie's, you'll join straight into that queue. It goes all the way through the crash up by Xavier Street. Durban sidewalk, Durban to Pietermaritzburg, very heavy mist reported in the Camperdown area, sort of Cato Ridge side and Linfield Park Umlos Road side. So very thick is the report that we're getting in from motorists and truckers in that area. Please drive carefully. N2 North, just starting to backlog this morning already through Spaghetti Junction. Bel Air Road queuing up towards Chief Abalatuli Hospital on your way up through the roadworks. The M7 coming through from Queensborough, likely to queue very shortly into that traffic congestion as well. Cape Town, here's the big one today. The N1 outbound currently closed between the Klipperville Road, exit the R304, and the R44 at Klapmuts. That's on your way out of Cape Town towards Powell. Big crash out by Klapmuts. The whole N1 going out of town is closed. There is quite a bit of pressure on the N1 highway approaching that R304 exit. You might want to come off at Brackenfell or Kraaifontein and just hop straight onto the R101 and move straight through. Come back on at Klapmuts and just use the R101 to avoid the bottleneck that is there on the M1 outbound. The highways towards city centre are looking quite busy. And day two of some protest disruption for motorists that use the R61. We saw it yesterday between Umtata and Port St John. We're seeing it again this morning. If you are due to use that road, just factor in some queue time to get past some blockages on that 61 route. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning.
Good morning. Hi there.
Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, in the current trading session, both markets are mostly down. Investors remain cautious ahead of interest rate decisions by central banks in Australia and Japan this week. Tomorrow, an interest rate decision is also expected from the US Central Bank. It is largely expected that the US Central Bank will keep interest rates unchanged. So in Asian markets, China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 1.1%. And Japan's Nikkei is the outlier this morning. It is the only market that is up 0.1%. And before the US market opens later today, the US futures market is down. Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each down 0.2%. And in the currency market, there is some weakness in the dollar against the rand. The local currency is 18.97.
And then a mixed outlook for the petrol and diesel price adjustments in April.
Yeah, diesel prices may be lowered at the start of April, while petrol prices might see a small increase. This would add to more pain to consumers because petrol prices have been increased for 3 straight months. The latest outlook for petrol and diesel prices is from the Central Energy Fund, which is a state-owned company that is responsible for South Africa's petrol and diesel needs. The Central Energy Fund says the price of diesel might be cut by between 32 cents and 36 cents a litre, and the price of petrol might increase by around 10 cents a litre. Petrol prices might increase in April because international oil prices have been higher and the currency exchange rate has been weaker.
And then the US Treasury, they're quite bullish about our economy.
Yeah, the US government is optimistic about South Africa's economy. A U.S. Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo says South Africa's economy continues to grow despite challenges such as Eskom blackouts and dysfunctional ports and the rail network. Adeyemo is encouraged by the private sector partnering with South Africa's government to fix the problems. Adeyemo recently spent 5 days in South Africa meeting the government and as well as business officials.
Ray Machlaka, thank you, Ray. Of course, back in an hour's time. More business news through the day here on SAFM. 24 minutes to 7.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Well, Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, of course, to be with us in just a moment. Good to hear from him, as always, about the situation that we're seeing. There you are. Sipho, good morning.
The fresh morning, and Jambo Africa to the listeners.
The Namibian caretaker president, Nangolo Mbumba, in South Africa.
Stephen, he has visited South Africa yesterday as part of introducing himself. He has been to Angola, Botswana, but also the meeting of yesterday was around the socio-economic development between the two nations. It was a very surprise visit, but like I said, Stephen, it was what we can call an introduction meeting of President Mbumba to South Africa as he has passed through Gaborone as well as Luanda.
And then in the Gambia, there's been a ban there on genital mutilation. This is around a practice of cutting the genitals of the genitalia of a young girl. Now people are looking at reversing the ban.
Even this ban, you will recall that during the then President Yahya Jammeh, it was banned in 2015 as a surprise without any explanation. And we know that globally this has been a challenge, whether in Africa, Asia, Middle East. And now what has been happening in the parliament yesterday in Gambia is that they want to reverse that, and there's a backing from the Muslim nation that is saying that is for religious reasons, is to protect cultural norms and values. But there is the pushback from many groups saying that this is not a good time for them to go through that, because they should consider what has been happening. And others are saying Gambia will be the first country anywhere in the world to make that reversal of having female genital cutting in the Gambia. This is very worrisome, but it has been in parliament in Gambia from yesterday.
And then in Rwanda, there's a new bill about marriage. Why is this important? What does it mean?
Stephen, it is important because they are looking at their marriage age was currently at 21, and now the members of parliament also yesterday engaged on of amending the age from 18 years now from 21, and I don't know what was the reason behind, but Stephen, they are looking at this bill also to look at the marriage between persons who are related, that it is not also allowed, but they are moving from the age of 21 to 18. It might need consent, Stephen, because at the age of 18 you are still gaining the age of being a major rather than being a minor. But I think Rwanda is moving towards looking at the youth population of its country.
In lots of countries, it was 16 if your parents consented. It might even still be the case here, I'm not sure. And then in Eswatini, they're looking at finally changing the law around medical cannabis. We know which direction this goes in.
Stephen, we know, but this is led by the king himself, saying that they are looking at medical cannabis, they are looking at the global practice, but they want to revise the colonial drug law dating back to many years in Eswatini. And those laws even dates back as 1922 and as well as 1903 until 1968, and that also had an impact in the SADC region. But Eswatini is looking at what I call even commercialization of medical cannabis. Rather than looking at traditional, they are looking at medicinal, they are looking at the hemp industry, and this is before the parliament, Stephen, as well, that Eswatini is looking at the case studies of South Africa, is looking at Rwanda, is looking at Zimbabwe, and many countries in the African continent, Ghana as well. They've been looking at this medical cannabis, looking at the global practice, your Germany, your Holland. Stephen, they've been making a lot of money around this medical cannabis. Now it appears the kingdom of Eswatini is singing the same tune now.
And then in our archive, you're taking us back to the 19th of March, 1996.
Not a good archive, Stephen, despite that it's almost 28 years ago when the late President Nelson Mandela and the late former wife, Nomzamo Winnie Mandela, went through a divorce process, and this divorce process was granted by Judge Elof. We know, Stephen, they were married since 1958. It means their marriage was there for 38 years. The issues were around also that there was no irreconcilable differences were being cited. And in some instances, Stephen, it appears that this divorce was justified, as we know that Nelson Mandela from the married Graça Machel. Asante sana, SG. We are still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Human Rights Month.
Rights Advocate Sipho Mantela, thank you very much indeed. Back, of course, tomorrow. More news from our continent through the day here, 19 minutes to 7.
Rising costs, housing prices, fuel price hikes, diminished consumer buying power, inflation. It's a jungle out there. Who do you trust when the only certainty is uncertainty? You need an investment team who considers it all to give you the advantage. At Prescient Investment Management, we analyze more than 120 million indicators daily because the biggest returns are found in the smallest insights. Discover the future of investing at prescient.co.za. Prescient Investment Management is a registered FSP.
The Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel. That 6-cylinder engine will take you by surprise. Succumb to its powers. Experience the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel for yourself.
A problem shared is a problem half solved. Don't ignore mental health, emotional wellness, gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS, adherence to chronic medication, the COVID-19 pandemic, and various other challenges. Let us help you and your loved ones. Contact Lifeline South Africa toll-free numbers on your mobile phone, 0800 012 322 or 0800 150 150. Alternatively, WhatsApp 084 922 8808. Lifeline South Africa, mental and emotional health for all. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
18 minutes to 7 the time. You know the number this morning, 086 000 2032. Big issues around water. Stage 2 load shedding as well, so difficult time in some places. And more developments with water in Gauteng metros overnight. Rand Water confirming there's been another power outage at the Aikenhof pumping station. A lightning strike there that caused problems 2 weeks ago led to 10 days of no water in places like Randburg and Blairgowrie. The Joburg mayor, Kabelo Gwamanda, was on the scene in Aikenhof last night. He said they're trying to fix the situation as quickly as possible. If there's no power at Aikenhof, then there's no water in some parts of Joburg as a result. It can take a little while for those problems to develop. Gugulethu Qhuma is the operations manager at Johannesburg Water. Gugulethu, good morning. Thanks for your time. I imagine you haven't had much sleep.
Good morning. Good morning to the listeners. I must say, at least as of end of last week, we have better times than the other 2 weeks. So we did manage to relax a bit. Thank you.
Okay. The strike last night, what impact is this going to have on your supplies?
Yes. Generally, if we look at the supply itself, most of the systems of Johannesburg Water have stabilized since the last crisis that we had from the 3rd and the 4th, which is earlier this month. So most of the systems have managed to stabilize towards the end of last week, as well as the Randburg systems that were recovering last. So right now, most of the systems are supplying. However, we are dealing with other challenges now because the systems were empty. Now we start to see some multiple bursts on the line, some repairs that needs to be done there and there. Because in the water systems, you want to keep your lines fairly charged, fairly pressurized. Once you start losing that, you start the air takes place and you have more problems in the line. But we are now dealing with those after impact. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to that. As I understand it, there was no electricity at the Aikenhof pumping station for a period last night. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Correct. The power was restored. I can't recall how many hours, but it was restored just before 12, just before midnight. So most of the systems start to ramp up and start pumping again.
Okay, so when you have an outage like that, and the system is designed, this is not supposed to happen, right? So when you have an outage like that, could we now have a problem as big as we had 2 weeks ago? Because I remember so clearly the conversation with City Power at the time when they told us what had happened at Aikenhof. The electricity is their responsibility. And then we saw 2 weeks of trouble after that. Are you expecting another 2 weeks of trouble after what happened last night?
No, we're not expecting much trouble. When I checked the systems this morning, they still fairly looking okay. Even those that supplied from the Aikenhof side, like your Soweto systems, they still fairly okay. Your Randburg system, they still fairly okay. Because remember, at night, the demand is quite less than during the day. So the system didn't really take much knock, considering that this power outage was for a couple of hours, maybe let's say roughly about 5 hours.
Okay, so I understand that, but doesn't it also mean that overnight, when there's less demand, is the time you'd use to fill your reservoirs? So what I'm saying is, it may not look like there's a problem now. When there was a lightning strike at Aikenhof 2 weeks ago, there wasn't a problem for 2 days. The problem came after that. So you're confident, as you talk to me now, that there won't be a problem in 3 days' time because of what happened last night?
At this stage, we will have then to measure that. But as I am looking at the Johannesburg water systems, currently they are stable. But yes, there are those that have taken a downwards trend. However, the problem will come if now the bulk supplier system have taken down such that they cannot supply Johannesburg water. Because remember, there is interconnection between the bulk supplier, in this case, our Rand Water is a bulk supplier and Johannesburg Water is distributing to the city. So now I need to take appreciation of how their systems responded to the power outage overnight.
Okay.
Then we can be able to make a measure.
Okay, I mean, we all understand that. We've all lived through this. We know that Rand Water supplies you. So you don't know from them yet how big the impact of this could be. Would that be a fair comment?
At this stage, we haven't have our joint technical meeting, but we will have our joint technical meeting this morning, and that will give us a good indication. Every morning around 8, we have a meeting daily so that we can look at the systems, look at which ones are constrained, plan for where we're going to do a load shifting, where we supply the constrained system, moving water around from those systems that are fairly normal.
Okay. You started, Gugulethu, with the issues around pipes bursting. So just to sort of go back a little bit, when the water is pressurized, everything is fine. When the water system, as I understand it, when the pipe is under pressure, the pipe gets slightly fatter and slightly shorter. When the pressure goes, so when there's no water running through it, the pipe gets longer and thinner. You put it under pressure again, it gets shorter and fatter. And this is when you get these pipe bursts. And I personally have seen them recently because, you see it all over the place in Randburg at the moment. And I mean, this is a difficult problem for you to fix, I realize that. You must have had so many problems like that in the last sort of 2 weeks.
Yes, but remember, the last 2 weeks we were mostly looking at the recovery and is gradually charging the system. So the problem wasn't there. We were anticipating it, charging the lines, flushing the lines, allowing the air to escape. But of course, it will never be adequate when your systems was completely empty. Right now, these bursts are manifesting now, as most of the systems now are fully charged. Now, as of the weekend and yesterday, we start to experience most burst. But during the past 2 weeks, no, we didn't have much burst as much as we start to experience now when the systems are fully charged.
Sure, I understand that. Do you have enough repair teams to fix all of these bursts and to fix them in a long-term way?
The pipe replacement program look at the long-term approach. I must say, though, there is underfunding on the capital expenditure space. That is well-known, and it's in our business plan as well, how we would like to be funded and what are the current funding models. So that information is there. But on the day-to-day repairs, we respond to those. Yes, we might have more best than maybe our team, but we still have more teams that will do the isolation, preparing for the best, training the lines, making sure the team that are doing the welding and doing other specialized repairs find the sites ready. So yes, we have a balanced team that can respond to the best.
Okay, I know it's difficult. When you dig a hole in the middle of the road to fix these, sometimes it's quite a deep hole. It used to be that the Joburg Roads Agency would fix those holes. They don't anymore. Who's supposed to fill it in now? Is it Joburg Water who's supposed to fill in the hole, or is it someone else?
We do have turnaround times for isolation. We've got turnaround times for repairs like isolation. That is the first part where we aim to do 4 to 6 hours to try and isolate water. Then in the next 24 hours or so, we aim at repairing, but it might be delayed due to the amount of repairs. Then 5 to 7 days, that's more of where the reinstatement and tarring that place. But in most cases, we don't manage to meet those timelines that are the set standard, because you'll find that there's more backlog that the teams are dealing with rather than. So we extend the hours and allowed for overtime and allowed for weekend work to do this reinstatement, especially on the busier road and intersections where we do repairs there.
Okay, so big intersections. I mean, there's some big intersections with huge holes. I mean, I'm talking holes 7-8 foot deep, right? 2 meters deep. A car goes into that, the person in that car is going to die. There are other areas where, if a child or someone is running and they don't see where they're going, they could fall into that hole. You'll never see them again. So you're saying, you try and do it within at least a week.
That is a standard, but I must admit, and we must admit that it's not always the case. We do rely on JRA assisting us. We do rely on contractors assisting us. But as you've already rightfully so highlighted, when we've got now these multiple best, reinstatement is the last part. The first part is to isolate and restore the water as quick as possible. Then the teams that are doing reinstatement, it could be longer because the hole, as you indicating, it's quite huge, bigger. But we try to put means to demonstrate to the motorists that there is a deep excavation there, put red tapes, put yellow barricades and all that. But again, there could be strong wind, there could be a storm overnight, something that would move, or maybe other residents, maybe not necessarily the resident, but other people who would remove this. But generally, we try to put visible signs so that when we've got excavations, motorists can be able to see those.
Gugulethu Qhuma, thank you for your time. I know it's very difficult. The operations manager at Johannesburg Water, 7 minutes to 7.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Makoti Down Products is a proudly South African family business, started more than 30 years ago with 12 geese and a piece of material. Makoti manufactures duvets, pillows, sleeping bags, and high-quality Egyptian cotton linen. Our down products are suitable for people with dust mite allergies and come with a lifelong guarantee. And we offer a nationwide cleaning service for all your feather and down products. Visit us at makoti.co.za or call us on 041 9922 395. For quality down, Makoti Down.
Friend, yes? I nearly fainted when I read somewhere that the GEPF's minimum funding level is at 72%.
Really?
Only to realize that it was in 1996 when the GEPF was founded.
Okay.
I just saw my pension going.
You like drama, hey friend? Sure.
We've come a long way. GEPF's minimum funding level is at 110.1%. This means that the GEPF has R1.10 for every R1 it owes its retiring members. GEPF members are more than covered when they retire with the GEPF. Tomorrow shouldn't be a worry when today is done right. GEPF, your investment, your future.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Bit of a hold up in from Benoni this morning along the N12 from Snake Road right through to just a point after Atlas Road. Looks like something's probably broken down rather than crashed there between Atlas and Rondebolt. It's got that feel about it. The N3 coming out of Germiston and Alberton quite heavy up through the lane closure at Van Buren this morning. And the earlier crash on the Mike Wyandotte Monday is being cleared, but it's left some traffic jamming from Monday right through to the Parktown area. Very heavy on the M1 South today from Brockfontein all the way to the New Road exit and the Bompadi Highway, the R80 coming out of Shoshingube. Big queues passing Block X exit this out. Durban, no traffic lights on the M25. That's the Kwamashu Highway at the M2. So it's a really big backlog in from sort of Mallandela Road down through Duffs Road. The M13 leaving Pinetown onto the road to exit Paradise Valley. That's very slow. And if you're going out of Cape Town, the N1 remains closed between the R304 Klipphebel exit and the R44 Klapmots off-ramp. That's due to a very serious crash. There is a big backlog of traffic moving moving slowly on the N1 through Eustonburg towards the R304. Exit the R304 is heavily congested around the N1 bridge because of all that N1 traffic diverting onto the 304, and the alternative route there clogged up as well, the R101 back to the 44 at Klapmuts. If you're going between Cape Town and Paarl, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through it. M5's heavy today from Ottery all the way through towards the busy N2. Jan Smuts is queuing, heading north through Athlone. Volume of traffic plus some load shedding in that region until 8 o'clock this morning. And the R61 linking Mthatha through to Port St John, day 2 of some protesting. This one just outside Mthatha. Yesterday protesting sort of halfway between Mthatha and Port St John, but this morning it's a little bit closer to Mthatha. R61 currently blocked with some tyres that are burning and some rocks and rubble across the road. Maybe a good idea to travel later on today once that scene's being cleared. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
4 minutes to 7, good morning. Well, you've heard about the situation regarding Joburg and the Aikenhof pumping station there. In Tshwane, the council there says they've had to shut down some water points because their reservoirs are so low, they're under 30%. The member of the Mayoral Committee for Utilities in the city of Tshwane is Themba Forsi. Councillor Forsi, good morning to you. What action are you actually taking?
Good morning, Steve Ovo, and good morning to your listeners. This was basically on Saturday when we had a session with Water when they explained their intricacies so far as the need and the storage was concerned. As a result, we then took a decision to inform our residents that they should use water sparingly so that we should not have problem but of assistance to the rainwater issue.
Okay. Why are your reservoirs so low? Is it just high demand from the way you see it? Are you not getting enough water from Rand Water and from Hartbeespoort?
No. So our reservoirs are healthy. It is the storage from the rainwater side. We are okay. Our reservoirs are running well. We're getting a supply. But in light of what is happening in Johannesburg, we saw it fit that we should be the party. Obviously, definitely, it is because of hot temperatures and obviously the high demand in the whole southern province. But so far as the city of Tshwane is concerned, our reservoirs are fully stocked up.
Okay. Every council has a percentage of unbilled water, though. So water lost in the system through leaks generally. In Gauteng, the actual average is 42%. I mentioned earlier in Mogale City, it's over 50%. How much unbilled water do you have in Tshwane? Is there a figure for that?
Non-revenue water in Tshwane is just around 32%. And obviously we are doing something about it so far as making sure that we replace all the asbestos pipes. You'd understand, Steve Over, that we adopted Odi, Kungwini, Nokimtatama. Most of these were municipalities that did not have plan and capital projects and all and so forth. So as a result, we see it fit and we should have a proper capital so that we can be able to then have an installation of new pipes, asbestos pipes on average of 25 years. So you can imagine that that has gone way past. That is one. The second part also is just to empower our residents by informing them that they should be able to use water sparingly and obviously make sure that they don't water their gardens, etc., fill up their pools. It is a no-brainer also to say to our residents, please use water sparingly when we've got lengthy water leaks down the street. So that's why I'm saying that as the city, we're taking responsibility for that, making sure that we're closing all the leaks timelessly and all of that. I think in the next financial year also we are going to have more boots on the ground so far as employing artisans so that we can plumbers and artisans to make sure that we then add to that speedily closing all these leaks.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Themba Forsi is the member of the Mayoral Committee for Utilities in the city of Tshwane with the Democratic Alliance. Well, more to come on the issue around the Zulu royal family. They've got a briefing today. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal has a briefing today as well about the incident involving Siboniso Duma and his yanking of the microphone away from the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom, to Lesizwe Buthelezi. We'll talk about electricity as well. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
And impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, the ANC takes the registration of MK Party to court, and Biden cautions Netanyahu against offensive in Rafah. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. We begin with some election-related news. The ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. The ANC argues that there were procedural flaws in the way the party was registered by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawethu Mosri. It contends that the MK Party was supposed to launch a fresh application and not supplement its original and initial application, which was rejected by Mosri. Legal analyst Ritume Tsipiri.
One of the reasons that it's going to be difficult for the ANC is that it didn't make proper use of the appeal mechanisms and the objection mechanisms in the Electoral Commission Act. It didn't object to Umkhonto weSizwe's application to be registered as a political party when it had the ability to do so. When it did eventually belatedly object, the objection was actually dismissed as being irregular. It also did not appeal the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe timelessly and when it should have done so. And this is particularly problematic because in this way it could be argued that the ANC has actually given up its right to challenge the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe as a political party.
Power has been restored to the suburbs that experienced power cuts around Johannesburg South last night. Johannesburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda says there was a power failure due to a lightning strike at the El Dorado Park substation, resulting in many areas being plunged into darkness. Kwamanda says the power cut also affected the Ekenhof water pump station, which supplies water to reservoirs across the city.
At this point, we are waiting for a report from Joburg Water to give us a clear indication as to how it has affected the water supply. We will give you an update first thing in the morning on the duration in which potential disruptions may occur. At this point, we would like to ask that you bear with us through these difficult times, and we are committed to ensuring that whichever disruption that we encounter, we rush and restore it speedily.
The city of Tshwane says a key valve which had been tampered with has been opened again and water pressure is expected to increase in the Ekangala and Rithabiseng areas. The Water and Sanitation Department observed a decrease in pressure and ultimately no water supply in these areas yesterday morning. Upon inspection, it was discovered that the valve located in Ekangala had been tampered with. The city spokesperson, Lindela Mashego, urged residents to report any suspicious activity around the city's infrastructure to the Tshwane Metro Police Department.
The city of Tshwane is dismayed following the discovery of an intrusion into a chamber housing where the cross-border valve is located. The valve regulates and controls the flow of water to Ekangala and the Rithabiseng areas in Region 7. Following the tampering, the city promptly enlisted the services of Tshwane Metro Police Department to escort the technicians on site to lift up the mechanism used to prevent the water flow.
The Mangaung Metro in the Free State says there will be a water supply interruption in the southern parts of Bloemfontein due to a pipe burst next to Vista Park. Spokesperson Kondile Ketama says the Fal Central Water has informed the city that the team is on the ground and there's no turnaround time as yet. There will be no water supply to Vista Park, Hamilton Industrial Area and adjacent areas. Ketama says the Metro will continue to update members of the community on progress in rectifying the problem. On to other news, the city of Cape Town says the mushrooming of shacks remains a concern as the city is facing housing backlog. Mopping up operations are underway following a devastating fire that swept through the Mangaung informal settlement in Philippi on the Cape Flats at the weekend. At least 400 residents were displaced and over 180 structures destroyed. Cape Town Mayoral Committee member for Human Settlements, Carl Popheim, says efforts are underway to address the housing needs.
And there's multiple efforts. We know that we're operating in a fiscal economy that's declining, 150 million rand cut from our budget. So the ability for the city to build free housing to meet the demand can't be outweighed. But the city has taken an integrated approach. We've made more affordable housing available in the last 3 years for the executive mayor's term than has been done in the last 10 years. 4,000 units released to the market in the last 3 years.
And finally, U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time in a month to repeat his warning that a military operation in Rafah in southern Gaza would be a mistake. Netanyahu says an operation there is necessary to defeat Hamas. Israeli government spokesperson is Avi Heyman.
There are ongoing discussions with the Americans. There have been from day one. They are our closest ally. What I can tell you is that we have to go after Hamas in Rafah. There's a historic precedent of moving populations out of harm's way. We have cleared areas, and we will continue to clear areas, and we will put them in safe islands within Gaza.
Recapping your top story, and the ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 7:30.
A very good morning to you. Coming up on your Sunrise Sports, it's soccer, a Spanish showdown in the Nedbank Cup as Amazulu and Orlando Pirates clash under their Spanish coaches, and more soccer as there's no Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi in their country's upcoming matches. Full details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy in Pretoria this morning. If you use the Mopani Highway, there's a really big backlog on the R80, having left Shoshenguve just coming through Block XX down toward. It's a crash in actually down towards Rossen Road. Collision there, big delays on that R80. It's a busy route, and that collision scene holding everything up at this stage. Durban, no traffic lights. The Kwamashu Highway at the N2 coming through from Kwamashu. That's heavy. The N2 North heavier than normal, backlogging from the cement factory through the Works at Spaghetti Junction. Cape Town, a crash on the R300 North before Hindle Road as you come off the N2 onto the R300 direction Kales River. That's slow. A breakdown on the N1 before Kuba. Get a change under pressure from Belleville along the N1. And the N1 out of Cape Town to Paarl. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. The highway's closed between the Klippevel and Klapmuts exits. That's due to a big crash before Klapmuts. Very heavy on the highway. Very heavy on the Klippevel Road alternative route at the N1 bridge there. And big backlogs on the R101, the alternative route out towards the rejoin point at Klapmuts. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Right, lots to come. A big focus on the situation regarding the ANC, the IFP, and what happened over the weekend. We'll speak to Professor Musa Kulu about that in just a moment. The sort of unbundling of Eskom, NERSA, the energy regulator, approving the takeover of contracts by the new National Transmission Company of SA. It sounds complicated. It will matter to you, I guarantee it. We'll look at that in the next little while. And then in Diepkloof in Soweto yesterday, people living in the hostel there, they had a big protest. We understand that there's been no sort of action from the Gauteng Premier on that. We'll find out a bit more about why people are protesting. And then, the idea of just feeling tired, fatigued, exhausted, sort of at the moment. Why are so many people feeling like this? Is it the heat in some places? Is it something else? Is it the sort of anxiety, the uncertainty, the change of season? I don't know. We'll find out a bit more about that. But just a general kind of feeling that I think people have. All right, good to hear from you this morning as well on 086 000 2032. It's 8 after 7.
At SAFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Well, we're expecting a series of briefings today in response to the actions of the ANC's chair in KwaZulu-Natal, Sibonisa Duma, after he literally took the microphone away from the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu King. The IFP member, Thulisizwe Buthelezi, at a government event on Saturday. Duma says he took the microphone away and interrupted Buthelezi because Buthelezi was about to make a political point at a government event. The IFP says Duma is a bully who has desecrated the Zulu monarchy. They've also criticised Duma for the way in which he handed the microphone to King Msizulu Kazwelithini. Now, the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is holding a briefing on this issue this morning. I understand the Amabuto residents are also holding a briefing. There is a sense or predictions that the Zulu royal family might ban Duma from any of its events in the future. Professor Musa Kulu is a cultural and political analyst. He joins us now. Professor Kulu, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
I made the point yesterday that I've never seen someone taking the microphone away from someone else at a government event like this. And then the action, as the IFP describes it, of just handing the microphone to the king. I suppose anyone watching this would have been quite shocked.
Well, it has happened before. In 2006, in the event of commemoration of Nkosi Pambata of the Poltex rebellion, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi grabbed the microphone from MC in the presence of President Thabo Mbeki and his Zulu King because he wanted to speak and he was not on the ground. it happened again in 2008. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi grabbed the microphone away from then MEC Mike Mabuyakulu, who was MC of the Freedom Day event in Mandeni. So it has happened before. It's not new. But I was there on Saturday and I saw what happened. We just worry about these many press briefings because the making of violence, you can see, is underway right now. On Saturday, before Saturday, Thulasizwe Buthelezi, the Prime Minister to the King, was posting on social media that he was going to do exactly what he ended up doing, and that he was going to humiliate the ANC of KZN in front of the president on Saturday. And he was even saying that he will do so. No one stopped him because that is his district. So Duma knew what Thulasizwe Buthelezi was doing, and for all fairness, he had to act because Thulasizwe Buthelezi was about to read names of people who he regards as enemies of the king and enemies of the kingdom, and by implication enemies of the IFP on the podium. I think there would have been bloodbath if that had happened, had been allowed to happen. So when Thulasizwe started by saying that the provincial government is not looking after the king, it disrespects the king. Now I don't know. Maybe politically it's a different story altogether, but when it comes to the analysis of truth, the king, the Zulu king, has a budget from the provincial government of 79 million rand from the fiscus, from taxpayers' money, and there's no other king in South Africa who has got that kind of support from government. His security is at presidential level. All the palaces are being looked after, and staff has been employed that works on the palaces. Grocery is bought by government at the end of each month, and electricity and other utilities are paid for. But politically, it could be a different matter altogether. So there has been complaints from other kings in South Africa that maybe the Zulu king is receiving exceptional treatment. So those could have been some of the things that offended Duma, because once somebody says they're going to attack you during the weekend and they're going to humiliate you. Repeatedly, he was posting. I saw it is even here on my phone, and then he does exactly that. The second thing is that Thulasizwe Buthelezi was not on the program. He appointed himself to talk. Government generally does not include the prime minister to the king in its programs because it's not a government recognized position. So in terms of protocol, it's not known where it would fall, especially when the president must speak and so on. So culturally, I said even to the leader of the IFP that they need maybe to come together with the ANC in KZN and find out what role really is the position of the traditional prime minister to the king in relation to government events. Because, as we all know, government events are guided by government protocol.
I was not aware of the social media posts that you're referring to beforehand, but obviously you're suggesting Duma kind of was primed and knew exactly what was going to happen. You mentioned that there'll now be these press conferences today. We understand there will be one for the ANC, one, I think, from the Amabuto regiments. Are you worried this is maybe the wrong approach? If you actually want to calm things down, and I know President Ramaphosa said he wants to calm things down, he wants a meeting, everybody holding press conferences is not the right way unless they have their press conferences together.
Yeah, no, it's not the right way. And tomorrow, Amakosi, different factions of Amakosi are also holding their own press conferences. So no one is wanting to talk to the other. And you can see that, I know, for example, that the leader of Amabuto is close to Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi. So you can see what will happen there in that press conference. The ANC has got its own approach to this, and Namakosi are also, because there are different factions of them. So there will be those who are for Tula Sizwe and those who are for the ANC. All of them holding press conferences. It can get worse than what it is now.
Sure. Obviously, we need cool heads. I noticed with interest that Dr. Zwelium Kize seems to be involved in this. He's a senior figure in the ANC. Long history in KwaZulu-Natal. Would he be the right kind of person for the ANC to send?
Well, he could have been. I don't know, because I was sitting with him on Saturday at the event, and he was slightly not happy about the what happened, and he had undertaken to talk to Smundeben, another veteran of the KZN ANC-led leadership, to find a way in which they could calm things down. I think what's happening now, they've entered that level of calming things down. All in all, though, the context of what happened, Stephen, you can remember many weeks ago, maybe it was in January, where I said maybe the king has made a mistake by appointing somebody with such a high profile position in the IFP, because then immediately he took the microphone, he started, a speech that was seen to be attacking the ANC. And then using the platform, and the Zulu royal family and the king himself now are seen to be, in some circles, on the side of the IFP, and then the ANC and other political parties feel left out of the glory of Zulu kingship. It was, I don't think it was well thought out, and many people had thought that the son of the late President Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who is generally accepted by everyone across the board, would have been the one. But maybe there were other reasons. But the political profile of Tula Sizwe Buthelezi could compromise the Zulu royal family.
Professor Musa Kolu, thank you. Cultural and political analyst. All right, well, it does. I mean, I was not aware of the social media posts that he says were posted by Buthelezi beforehand, so it may well change the picture. Let's see how that story develops through the day. 18 after 7.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Well, while there's still concerns about water problems this morning, some movement around the breakup of Eskom. The energy regulator nurses now approved the application by Eskom to transfer its powers around the purchase of electricity from independent power producers to the new National Transmission Company, South Africa. In other words, Eskom no longer buys the power from these companies. Instead, the National Transmission Company will buy the power. And Tlantla Gumede is the regulator member responsible for energy regulation at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. And Tlantla, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen.
How important is this decision? Does this mean then that independent power producers no longer have a relationship with Eskom? Eskom's not their client anymore.
Well, sometimes it's all lost in communication. You have to remember that NTCSA is still actually owned by Eskom Holdings. And therefore, although NTCSA is now a separate company, and from Eskom, as we all know, Eskom, it now has got its own board, but that relationship is not diminished. But also, just to indicate that, this part of this transaction is but one of the last legs of this separation of transmission systems operation from Eskom Holdings to be an independent player.
Do the contracts and the terms and conditions, and I suppose, importantly, the price that the IPPs had with Eskom, do they stay exactly the same? In other words, they're going to get the same per kilowatt hour that they got with Eskom. Now someone else is just dealing with the money. I mean, I realize it's still part of Eskom, but I presume those terms and conditions of those contracts don't change.
Nothing changes, Stephen. In fact, as I always indicate, is that those contracts, although were entered by Eskom Holdings and managed by Eskom Holdings, so Eskom bought power from IPPs and then actually on-sold the power. But that contract, the power purchase agreements, are actually backed by the national fiscus. There are sovereign guarantees. So even if Eskom could not honor those contracts, the fiscus would have then come in. The same still applies. Nothing has changed.
Okay. This is all part of the breakup of Eskom into three parts, and it's a long process. I don't know, as the regulator, if you have or allowed to have a view on that. I mean, I know you can say yes or no to applications before you, basically. Are you allowed to say in Tlantla whether you believe the breakup of Eskom is the right strategy to follow?
Let's put it this way: we, as a regulator, yes, we actually follow published policy, and this is a policy position of government. But is it new to is it something that is unique to South Africa? The answer to that is definitely not. In fact, there are now very few countries in the world that have got a vertically integrated system. In most countries, the unbundling happened many years ago. So we but one of the last few countries in the world that had an integrated system, yes, which had then allowed for Eskom to be a single buyer, to allow for participation by the private sector in the generation space. However, in terms of vertically integrated electricity companies in the world, we are very, very few.
By that you mean one company would generate the power, distribute the power, and transmit the power?
Correct.
Okay. In Tlantla Gumede, thank you. The regulator member responsible for electricity regulation at NERSA. You with SFM, 21 minutes now after 7. Hugo Kruger is a civil nuclear engineer, but also an energy analyst. Hugo, good morning. You believe that unbundling Eskom in this way is a mistake. Why do you believe that?
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me. First, I'd just like to dispute something your former guest just said, that most countries have it. That's true. It's something like 100 countries have a form of unbundling, but it means 90 countries do not. So the world's actually divided on that. And if you zoom into those countries, most of Canada and I think something like a third of America doesn't have it yet. And then in the United States, another third is like 50-50 like South Africa. So it's a bit of a misleading claim to say it's a universally accepted one. Unbundling stopped in the United States because of the Enron scandal. And that is actually why I suspect it stopped in South Africa as well in 1998. It's not a new debate in South Africa, but it was in many countries. Started, I believe in Chile was the first country to enact it. It actually came in as a bout of criminality. And I've just been skeptical of the unbundling process because it does the legal separation. I'm not too concerned about it, to be honest with you. I'm highly skeptical of what is being sold to the public at the moment under the guise of unbundling. And then I have to point out, within the peer-reviewed literature, many economists are questioning whether it wasn't a historical mistake, including MIT. I haven't seen anything mentioned in the public sphere.
So the idea is to ensure that Eskom becomes a generation capacity. So you would have companies competing with each other, generating electricity, selling it to the transmission company. And the argument goes, you can't do that if that transmission company is also generating electricity. So in other words, the Eskom we had before, which generated electricity and then transmitted and distributed that electricity, had to be broken up so that it would be fair for an independent power producer generating electricity to be able to compete with the generation arm of Eskom so that they could both vie for a contract with the transmission company, right? And President Cyril Ramaphosa is on the record as saying we can never have a monopoly over electricity generation again, because that got us where we are now with load shedding for so long. So then if you have to do that, what other options are there? I mean, are you not once you accept that you can't have a monopoly on the generation of electricity, you have to break it up?
Well, first you have to accept what President Ramaphosa has said is true, which I don't believe, but let's assume it is. You can still buy through power purchase agreements and IPPs under the current system. My biggest concern with the unbundling, Stephen, is South Africa doesn't have a safety of supply. And if you look at why the Enron scandal failed in California, it's because they didn't have a safety of supply. So you had high price fluctuations and then you had a political backdrop. And if you look at the literature in this, what it will tell you is the proponents of unbundling tend to underestimate the institutional resistance that they will face. The other point I want to make here is that when you have various different technologies competing against each other, say a coal plant against a renewable panel or whatever, don't have the same quality of electricity. And this is widely acknowledged. So what you have in wholesale markets in Europe and in England, for example, is what they call a capacity market. It's like a market to fix what this thing does, because the agreement system also is an artificial creation. It's not a free market. People confuse the two. Okay, the easiest way, in my view, if you want to break Eskom's monopoly, would be this: do an IPO, do an initial public offering, sell the shares, and then you can say, okay, as we've rationalized the processes, and then the management can say, okay, we're not going to be in this space. We will allow people to sell through our distribution grid. And then maybe for the future, you can unbundle. I'm not against unbundling in a dogmatic sense. It works in Texas, it works in Alberta. But throughout the entire African continent, the World Bank only acknowledges one example of full success story of unbundling, and that's the Ivory Coast. So we have a 1 in 50 bet that we're going to be different than the rest of Africa. Zimbabwe unbundled, it collapsed. Lebanon unbundled, and Russia as a competitor to electricity to Lebanon. And in Russia, the oligarchs took over the place. So which one are we going to be? Are we going to be Texas or Russia or Zimbabwe? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a prophet. But it would seem to me that we're not thinking this through a little bit.
I mean, hanging over all of this is Eskom's debt, and that's really, the big issue. And I can't see any way that Eskom repays that debt in its current form or a new form. It almost doesn't matter. In the end, is government or the taxpayer just going to have to pay for it?
They are, and I want to point out why Eskom has this debt. Eskom has this debt because NERSA has never had cost-reflective tariffs. And on top of that, now Eskom has this weird structure where I don't know how NERSA came up with this thing, where, the more you use, supposedly more you're going to pay, but that encourages richer people to go off-grid. But I want to point something out here. When somebody comes with a solar panel and a battery in his house, he still has to pay, in my view, the price for the infrastructure because he's grid tied. Because Eskom is his battery, if you will. If everything goes wrong, Eskom is the last seller of electricity. So in other words, NERSA has to come with capacity charges to help Eskom recapitalize. So a lot of the debt is due to a failure of policy. But it's a classical example of unbundling or privatization gone wrong. And I'm going to quote Noam Chomsky here, where he says you run it into the ground, you break it, you make sure it doesn't work, and then you hand it over to the private sector for scrap. And I do believe maybe, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the end result will be Eskom generation will collapse. Private sector will buy it up. They will realize actually how bankable it is, because Eskom's value is not in the asset, it's in the licensing, it's in the access to the grid. And I believe that is what the private sector ultimately wants.
Hugo Kruger, thank you. The view from him, an energy expert. 27 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Nedbank quarterfinals.
Yeah, it's a Spanish showdown. That's right. The clash between two teams with a battle of strategies. And that's between the two Spanish maestros. Amazulu, under the guidance of Pablo Franco Martin, is set to lock horns with Orlando Pirates, led by Jose Ribeiro, in a much-anticipated showdown in Durban. This marks a unique moment in South African football as the two Spanish coaches face off for the first time this season. With both sides showing strong form, this match promises to be a tactical chess game on the field. Will Martin's defensive mastery outplay Ribeiro's attacking flair? You're going to have to tune into SABC Sport to find out who will lead their team to victory and a place in the semi-finals of the country's premier knockout competition. Elsewhere, Lionel Messi will not play in Argentina's two friendlies in the United States this month, and that's due to a right leg muscle injury. The captain was injured last week while playing for his Inter Miami club in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Now, Portugal's squad, they began to prepare for their warm-up matches ahead of Euro 2024 in Germany. And Portugal star Cristiano Ronaldo was absent as he was only called to play the away match against Slovenia. Cricket action, Team South Africa slipped to a 70-run defeat against Kenya in their second match of the Africa Games that took place at the Achimota Cricket Oval. Kenya won the toss and opted to bat first, posting 141 for 6 from their allotted 20 overs before restricting South Africa to 71 all out with 5 overs to spare. The defeat for Team South Africa comes just 24 hours after an impressive 134-run win over host Ghana at the same venue. South Africa take on Uganda. That's in their final Group A match tomorrow. Athletics news. The rising middle distance star Prudence Sekgodiso won the 800 metres at the Athletics South Africa Grand Prix meet in Pretoria yesterday and said she was looking to break Caster Semenya's 2 main national records. Meanwhile, Sekgodiso's partner, her training partner, Ketebogile Hangura of Botswana, won the men's race in the fastest time on South African soil. He clocked 1 minute 43.94 seconds, a comfortable Olympic qualifier. And ex-Olympic champion Caitlyn Jenner has backed New York County Executive Bruce Blakeman's edict banning transgender athletes from competing against biological girls in competitive sporting events held in the country's 100 fields. Now, Jenner argued, one of the world's most famous trans public figures, that biological males should not be allowed to compete in female sports in order to protect the integrity of the competition.
The difference between men and women exists based on DNA, or your chromosomes, which leads to our physical development, regardless of a trans person's hormones, surgeries, status in transition. There are massive advantages and undeniable differences from male development, basically going through male puberty. The solution is simple. When it comes to athletics, participation with the biological sex, you have to compete in the biological sex that you were born.
That's where we leave it for now on Sunrise. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Sure. You were there, SAFM, leading the conversation. It's stage 2, literally now and all day, 7:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe party. The party argues that there were procedural flaws in the way the other party was registered by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawetu Mosri. The Communication Workers Union, CWU, has called on Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications to intervene in a wage dispute at the SABC. The union is threatening a full-blown wage strike at the public broadcaster that will impact the coverage of the upcoming general elections. And Johannesburg Water has confirmed that some of its reservoirs in Soweto are experiencing low water pressure to no water at all. The water utility maintains that there is currently a high demand for water in some of the Soweto systems that is exacerbated by the current heat wave. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning again. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, both markets are mostly down in the current trading session. Investors still remain cautious ahead of interest rate decisions by central banks in Australia and Japan this week. Tomorrow, an interest rate decision is also expected from the US Central Bank. It is largely expected that the central banks will keep interest rates unchanged. So in Asian markets, China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.3%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 1.1%, and Japan's Nikkei is up 0.2%. Before the US market opens later today, the US futures market is down. Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each down 0.2%. And in the local market, the JSE, it was down 0.8% yesterday. The shares of mining companies were mostly down.
And then Santam, the latest insurance company, to set minimum pay for workers at 15,000 Rand a month.
Yes, Santam is South Africa's largest short-term insurer. Santam has joined Old Mutual in setting its minimum wage at 15,000 Rand per month for its workers. This is well above the national minimum wage in South Africa of nearly 4,400 Rand. Santam's decision will put pressure on other financial services companies to reconsider their minimum wages. Wages in the financial services industry are not regulated as there is no sectorial minimum wage requirements. This is because financial services is not viewed as a vulnerable industry or profession, such as, for example, domestic workers and the mining sector.
And Tungela resources badly affected by the poor performance of our railways.
Yes, coal miners such as Tungela Resources continue to be harmed by Transnet's poor rail performance and lower coal prices. Tungela's profits in 2023 were down by 72% to reach 5 billion rand. Tungela's profits were at a healthy 18 billion rand in 2022. Like other coal mining companies, Tungela relies on Transnet to rail its coal to markets, but the dysfunction of Transnet's rail network means that Tungela is moving less coal. Also, coal prices fell by 55% in 2023, which has negatively impacted Tungela's profits.
Ray McClark, thank you. Ray, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM. 25 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, sorry, we did lose Rob Byrne in there somewhere. Problems with connecting to his studio. Do apologise for that. 086 000 2032. That, of course, is the number to dial. A lot going on this morning. Let's start with Les in Khobakwani. Les, hi. You worried about elections and safety? Go for it.
Yes, Stephen, I'm speaking to Lisiva, of course. Yes, you see, Stephen, I'm worrying about elections, but before that, I heard you talk to water providing authority in Gauteng. There is a clear explanation. Now they talk about the pressure in the pipe system. They talk about the lightning at the
Aikenhof.
Aikenhof. So, it didn't put in one because it's not the African National Congress that is running these big two metros. There is technical explanations and the glitches. But when there is ANC problem, they say vote ANC out, vote ANC out. Now because it's Al Jama in city of Johannesburg and it's DA in Swane, there is a clear explanation that the residents should understand why there is a water shady. But that's not my point. My point
I don't know if that's necessarily the case because, I mean, the ANC is the dominant party in Joburg. But anyway, in that coalition, and I don't think
we accept the explanation and believe in Polokwane, Grooteon, Israel, Mohale, and other municipalities. The same explanation could be given. So you see, I want to talk about the threat to this upcoming election by Mkondo Wesiso party. I really what Bongegile is saying, the lady that is saying, is saying about the elections that it's going to be blood, it should be registered. I said, Bonginko is what he's saying. She was saying this in the run-up to July unrest, and then no consequence. In fact, I'm blaming the government of the day, led by the African National Congress. They've done nothing exactly what should have taught us the lesson about the July unrest. Yeah. Now they continue the elections and they continue. Now is the time that the gentleman must be arrested, put in jail, including the children of Jacob Zuma, because they're behind all these things. They must be arrested for July arrest and they must be arrested for making threats now. We shouldn't allow our voters to stay because many people will not go to there will be some incident, although it will be sporadic, but we'll see them bombing at some polling station and many people will be affected and they will not go to the voting station during the time of election. So the government of the day must do something, in particular the minister must do something about this thing.
All right, Les and Khobakwani, I hear you, thank you. And I mean, there are laws against the incitement to violence. You're not allowed to incite violence. And we all know what was said on X or Twitter during that period. And how there haven't, as far as I can see, been consequences for that. I know some legal people have told me actually very difficult to get a proper case on that. All right, let's see. Let's go to Kimberly. Daniel, hi, voting. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Yeah, man. I want to talk about voting and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want just 2 days ago or so, the Chicago from Khobakwani said black people must vote for the ANC because they are black. And
I don't know if that was on our show. I might have missed it, but anyway, I know other people have said that before.
Yeah, and but he said black people must vote for the ANC the liberation movement. Okay, my first voting, it was black. My second one was black. My third one was black. But now I'm voting for service delivery. That's my message to South Africans. We want service delivery. We don't want to hear about the movements and all those things. We want services finished and clear. Thank you, Steve.
Well, Daniel, yeah, I mean, while you're still on the line, if I may, if you don't mind me responding to that, I don't know if you can say that a party is this or that. I mean, the Inkatha Freedom Party has had white Afrikaans-speaking MPs for as long as I can remember. In fact, I think their first member of parliament was a white Afrikaans person who crossed from the National Party, Koos van der Merwe. You've gone now. Okay, sorry about that, but the call is gone. But just to finish my point, if you don't mind for a second, I mean, I don't think you can say this party is completely black or completely white, and I don't think we should be able to say that. We mustn't base people's voting choices just on identity, but of course it is a huge part of our conversation. Patrick in Bethlehem, hi, good morning. You've been listening through the morning.
Hey, Eddie, good morning, my brother.
Good morning, Patrick.
Eddie, three things, very quick.
Yeah.
Number one, I was very impressed last week when Minister Lady Pando, called you, when you were talking about that stuff. And
I think that was John Gericke who was in for me, but I did hear about that, yeah.
Yeah, but that was this is in your show.
Yeah.
So that means this show really, it has got content and very interesting. Then number two, SG, I have given you the title of a diplomatic presenter. Now, I just want you, Steve-O, to remember that. By saying that, I don't mean to say now you must rest on your laurels under the pretext that now you have achieved the pinnacle of what I believe you are capable of. All right, Steve-O?
Okay, so I need to keep working, yeah.
Yeah, and remember, Steve-O, keep on pushing up this wonderful job that you are doing together with your team. And I shall be watching you and watching you. Number three, last but not least, Steve-O. If I happen to come to Radio Park and I manage to evade all the security guys and machines there, and then I get into your studio and I grab your mic,
yes.
How would you react?
I don't know, but I would be very angry and frustrated, and I would probably show that frustration. I don't think I wouldn't engage in violence, I don't think, but I would be very frustrated.
Thank you very much. That's what I was expecting from my diplomatic presenter. Wonderful, good job, Steve-O. Carry on, I'm listening.
Thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate it. Patrick on the line from Bethlehem is a good example of someone who enjoys the show, but is going to continue to hold me accountable, as you must, as we go through the period. All right, good to hear from you this morning. Saziso on the line around. You heard Professor Kulu about the leader of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal and the traditional Zulu Prime Minister. Saziso, good morning.
Morning, Steve. Thank you for taking my call. Actually, thank you to your team for bringing Professor Kulu on air. For me, I'm not a member of ANC. I'm not a member of IAP. I'm an African, and I stand for peace. And when people do things in the public and no one corrects them, it becomes a norm.
Yeah.
At the same time, when people do wrong things in the public, it becomes a norm also.
Yeah.
What is not right. Now that Professor Kulu explained the motive behind Mr. Bukele's or Reverend Bukele's speech, now I accept what Duma did. In as much as it's wrong, I accept. Because there are things that need to nip in the bud before they go further.
Yeah, and it does need to be nipped in the bud, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know about today's press conferences if that's a wise idea.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that either. But yeah, someone needs to come and intervene now and bring peace.
So Zizo, on the line from Johannesburg, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. All right, in a moment, Tabiso and Polokwane, Crispin and Durban, these issues that we've been looking at through the morning. Your view as well, 086 000 2032, 16 minutes to 8.
Those who love the beautiful game can never have enough of the incredible moments. Like the fascinating last-minute goals, the unbelievable saves, the top-of-the-range reviews of critical match scenarios by the legendary Mr. Ref, the Mummies of the week, and highly knowledgeable analysts. Catch Soccer Zone on Mondays at 8 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 10 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sikla Zikalala is proud to announce the country will host Africa's largest sustainable infrastructure development symposiums, the SID-SSA, from the 17th to the 19th of March at the Cape Town International Convention Centre, where President Cyril Ramaphosa will also deliver a keynote address. SIDSA highlights include the showcasing of progress on South Africa's infrastructure investment plan as adopted by Cabinet, the unveiling of a pipeline of the top 12 infrastructure priorities for project preparation and the funding of the 2024-2025 financial year, the launch of South Africa's construction book, as well as the new international partnerships and cooperations. Brought to you by Infrastructure South Africa, an entity of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the South African government leaving no one behind.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
14 minutes to 8. We'll get to the situation with the IFP and the KwaZulu-Natal in just a moment. Siyabonga, I do see your call. But first, to be so high in Polokwane, you want to talk about Zwelinzima Vavi yesterday and again saying that he was sorry he had ever supported former President Zuma. He was very critical of Zuma and MK.
Yes, Stephen. I mean, it was in the news on Sunday and even yesterday about, the former Secretary General of COSATU speaking about the 2005. You remember the 2000 fateful day in June, the 2007 and subsequent the 2009.
The tsunami quote was Vavi, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the tsunami. You'd remember that he was crisscrossing the country, saying that Jacob Zuma is pro-poor. And now, years later, it could be around 15 years later, we know what had happened. I mean, no one has to ask a question of what happened whether the 9 odd years of the leader of MKP. I'm not sure whether he's a leader or is the face of MKP, who has now formed his own party. But the question that I have, Stephen, would be whether do you accept an apology? Because, I mean, we know that the economy of the country was plummeted. I mean, the recent quoting by the former president Mbeki about the Nigerian Commission and the State Capture Commission, you will then realize that we have dealt with quite a number of challenges. But maybe we must accept his apology and say that maybe as in Jesus, people when they get born again, they see wrongs, what they have done, and when they were sinners. So perhaps maybe that is what we should accept an apology, but also call on others who I always don't like this way of telling people that, we told you that your continuous love of this trader from Nkandla, it's going to end in tears. And of course, it ended in tears. That's why apologies are coming thick and fast. Maybe perhaps we're still waiting for others to come in their numbers and apologize to the people of this country about what they did in making sure that men assume that power. Because you don't need a ruler. You know that there are a number of reports here and the piling up about what the man did and when he was the president of the country.
No, sure. Tabiso, in terms of accepting an apology, I think if it's genuine, and that's really the thing. And I must say, from what I know of Zwelinzima Vavi, and I've reported on him for years and years, I think that he is genuine. And he's been consistent in his apology too. I think that's important. It's not like he's going back and forth. I mean, he's been saying this for a long time now. Yeah.
Yes, no. He's very genuine. I could see he has been going on around. I mean, for sure, he has exhausted all the national and local papers apologizing to the people of this country.
That's true.
So he must just accept.
There's nowhere left to go. All right, Tabiso.
Thank you.
I'd never thought of it like that. Tabiso, thank you. And Polokwane has run out of newspapers to apologize. Thank you. Siyabonga in KwaZulu-Natal. Siyabonga, hi, good morning. The IFP and the ANC.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for taking my call. Well, Steve, I think I've been listening to the comments about what happened between the Zulu Prime Minister and the leader of the ANC in the province. And I think some of the people that have been commenting, maybe they don't follow the Zulu tradition so closely. Stephen, if a king appoints you as a prime minister, and when you are performing your duties as a prime minister, we must forget about you as a SABC presenter or SABC host show, because you are in a position of the prime minister. You may say what I don't like, but the position that you hold, it gives you that seniority over all of us. Because I think what we're forgetting here is that as people of KwaZulu-Natal, as Zulus, we have different political, we come from different political formation. But what unites us is our Zuluness.
Yeah.
So the actions of you against the Prime Minister may not only anger the supporters of the other party, but it will anger the Zulus. Because if you show disrespect to the throne, then you are not provoking the Saudis, but you are provoking the Zulus. People who say, regardless of where we come from, but we are Zulus because we guard our Zulus so jealously. So it shouldn't be an issue of, because up until this point, Stephen, I don't know what the Prime Minister was going to say about the senior leader of the ANC before the mic was grabbed from him. And we can't say these people, both of them are wrong, because the Prime Minister maybe was not even given the time to commit the wrong. But even if he was wrong, as a Zulu, you can't stand and grab the mic or fight with the Prime Minister in the full glare of the public.
Yeah.
It's unheard of, Stephen. We should not be afraid. I listened to Professor Mngomezulu yesterday. I know he's a very diplomatic person, but I think he shied away from picking the wrong, because no matter what, Duma was wrong. You can't say the Prime Minister was wrong in what he was saying. Because even if he was wrong, but he didn't say it because he didn't finish. Even if he was wrong, no one, maybe except the king.
Yeah.
No one can reprimand him just like that.
No,
it's unheard of. And also, Stephen, I question the senior leaders of the ANC in the province. You've got Zolim Kize who've been part of the regiment. Why did he not call this guy before even the end of the week? Because the apology came too late for me, and this is not good for us as Zulus. You know, and Stephen, I'm just wondering, because people are just working on eggs. You know, the Duma was wrong. Let's be clear about it. Whether the Prime Minister was going to be wrong after finishing the statement, we don't know, because he did not finish the statement. That's my point, Steve.
Yeah. No, sure. I understand that. All right, Siyabonga in KwaZulu-Natal, thank you. All right, you know the number, 086 000 2032. In a few moments, the issue around the Deep Kloof Hostel in Gauteng and Soweto. 8 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty heavily backed up into Sandton this morning on pretty much all approaches. William Mandela onto Sandton Drive, Ballyclare, Bryanston Drive, Ravonia Road coming through Morningside, Marlborough Drive through the N3 into that area, and also Grayston Drive coming off the Mike 1 highway with some lights down at Daisy. So that's pretty much a full house. The only route that really is flowing is Ravonia Road coming in from the Lovo side. If you're the outside, you're catching a luck, but if you're sort of northern parts of Sandton, it's all terribly backed up. N12, R24 routes from Ekurhuleni in towards a very busy N3, particularly the N3 going north through Edenvale. That's all heavily congested. The N1 through Midrand stays heavy between Brockfontein and the New Road exit, and an earlier crash on the Mabapadi Highway at Block XX, still holding traffic arriving from Shoshanguve, travelling in towards Pretoria. Also the N4, another very heavy one from Rousseau Street all the way through the N1 and down deep into Hatfield before you're out of that traffic. Durban side this morning, the N2 stays heavy from just after the cement factory all the way through Spaghetti Junction. Backlogs on the M4 Southern Freeway in towards Victoria Embankment, and the Ruthfirst Highway on the northern side of Durban. That's quite heavy between Msanga and Blue Lagoon, just backlogging both ways towards Virginia Airport. More protesting today just east of Mthatha on the Port St John's Road. Just outside Mthatha, the R61's been blocked with burning tyres and rocks and debris across the highway. Cape Town, the big story there is the closure of the N1 out of town. The road towards Paarl is closed at the Kliphevel exit. That's the R304 where you'd exit to Stellenbosch. Closure from there right through to the Klapmuts R44 off-ramp. The queue going out towards Paarl is deep into Brackenfell territory. You might want to come off as quick as you can in Brackenfell and Belleville and hop onto the R101 and just sort of bypass that N1 delay. Also, the M1 inbound, the breakdown before Kuba. Get a change, so that stays heavy from the Plattercliff Hill side. And the M5 still battling along this morning. Big backlogs there from Kenilworth all the way to a busy N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
All right. Well, you know the number. Lots of conversations, of course, around the situation in KwaZulu-Natal. We'll try and get to all of the calls as soon as we can. 5 minutes to 8 the time yesterday. There were protests by people living in the Diepkloof hostel. This is in Soweto in Gauteng. They're angry. The mayor of Joburg, Kabelo Gwamanda, was supposed to go to the hostel last week. Apparently he didn't. Now residents say they want the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, to intervene. I understand that Lebogang Maile, who is the MEC for Human Settlements in Gauteng, is actually having a meeting, I think, there later today. Sanele Msibi is a leader of the community in Diepkloof around the hostel. Sanele, good morning. Thanks for your time. Sanele, my mistake. There you are. Good morning.
Morning.
What is the situation at the hostel? You're protesting because of the poor living conditions. How bad is it for you?
Yeah, right now as we speak, the MEC is aroused now. I can see him. The situation right now is calm because the community is expecting the MEC. Right now, as we speak, he is arriving. I see the cars right now, and the situation here is bad. The hotel is collapsing and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So that's why we are protesting. So right now, what we expect is we don't expect any negotiations, any talks. We want plan of action from the MEC. That's what we want.
Okay. And the situation is bad. Has there been no maintenance there? Is it dirty in the hostel? Is it like that?
No one can live in this hotel. If I can tell you, no one can live in this hotel. Right now, they are calling me. The MEC is here.
Yes, I can understand. Sanele, we'll release you. Thank you. I know that we are a little later than we had originally scheduled. Sanele MCB is a community leader of the Diepkloof hostel. Sanele, thank you. Please go and join the MEC and have your meeting. I know it's very important to you. We have, Stuns has just told me and reminded me in my ear while we were talking, Sanele and I, that Lebogang Maile and his team have agreed to speak to you tomorrow after that meeting, so we should have them on SFM Sunrise for you. But that meeting just about to begin now.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Crispin on the line from Durban. Crispin, hi. You've been watching the strikes in Durban. I know you live in eThekwini. My understanding is that some services have now resumed after that illegal strike by SAMWU members.
Yeah, Stephen, greetings to you in the nation. The rot in Durban goes very deep. This is not a matter of just workers who suddenly got a rush of blood to their heads and did something stupid. I don't think people understand how the corruption works between the municipality, people outside the municipality, and the unions. So if you are a member of SAMWU, it is very likely that you're linked to a specific loan provider, credit provider. And in the one case that I'm very well aware of, somebody earning just over 18,000 rand a month pays 10,250 Rand a month to that credit provider who refuses ever to give a statement. So he doesn't know what he owes, and he's precluded from finding out. So one of the managers told me that about 80% of his workers are affected by this. They are desperate. They end up taking, in some cases, under 1,000 Rand a month home. And they can't even actually afford the transport to get to and from work. So workers are desperate. They have no faith in the system. And the only way that the logic of the system is get in there for what you can for yourself. It's not about the job. Don't focus on the job. Focus on the money, because that is the pattern that has been set from above. And we look at the electoral process and we think so much of what's happening here is about which party is going to get their hands on the loot. That logic pervades the whole system in Durban. Good managers, good workers are undermined and often isolated.
Sure. So, I mean, people really are living in a desperate means. And, I mean, it's illegal to not give a credit. I mean, there's a lot of illegality around all of this.
Yeah, I mean, the clear guidelines from government, no more than 25% of state workers should have their salaries deducted for a loan provider. The eThekwini municipality, the Mayor Kaunda should be here explaining how it is possible that somebody can be giving 65% plus, in some cases, of their basic salary to a credit provider. How does HR in Durban enable that process of sucking money out of the pay slips of the workers? That's apart from anything taken out of their bank accounts by other loan sharks.
Crispin on the line from Durban, thank you. Sure, it really does give you a bit of context as to some of the issues around that story. You with SFM leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, the ANC takes the registration of MK Party to court, and CW wage dispute threatens SABC election coverage. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. We start with some election news. The ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. The ANC argues that there were procedural flaws in the way the party was registered by Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Mawethu Mosri. It contends that the MK Party was supposed to launch a fresh application and not supplement its original and initial application, which was rejected by Mosri. Legal analyst Ritumetse Phiri.
One of the reasons that it's going to be difficult for the ANC is that it didn't make proper use of the appeal mechanisms and the objection mechanisms in the Electoral Commission Act. It didn't object to Umkhonto weSizwe's application to be registered as a political party when it had the ability to do so. When it did eventually belatedly object, the objection was actually dismissed as being irregular. It also did not appeal the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe timelessly and when it should have done so. And this is particularly problematic because in this way it could be argued that the ANC has actually given up its right to challenge the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe as a political party.
The Communication Workers Union CWU has called on Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications to intervene in a wage dispute with the SABC. The union is threatening a full-blown wage strike at the public broadcaster that will impact the coverage of the upcoming general elections. The parties are at a deadlock after a series of failed negotiations as the union says it is willing to accept the 6% offer but insists on it being backdated to April last year. CWU's National Bargaining Coordinator Nathan Bowers says they've received the strike certificate and will meet with the workers tomorrow to determine a way forward.
If CW goes on strike in the next couple of days, it will hamper this general elections campaign that's in full swing now. So, and we sympathize with the public of South Africa. It is not that workers are deliberate, but if workers are not afforded an increase over 3 years and then demand the bad date and we are treated like that by the SABC workers have no alternative but to bring the SABC to its knees in this election campaign.
Johannesburg Water has confirmed that some of its reservoirs in Soweto are experiencing low water pressure to no water at all. The water utility maintains that there is currently a high demand for water in some parts of Soweto systems, and this is exacerbated by the current heat wave. Johannesburg Water spokesperson Nombuso Shabalala says affected areas are being provided with alternative water supply.
The following reservoirs are impacted by low pressure to no water. These are Meadowlands, Orlando West, Mufulo North, Mzimhlope, Deepkloof, and Bramfisher reservoirs. To manage the high demand, Johannesburg Water will restrict supply in order to build capacity. Johannesburg Water's technical teams will continue to monitor these systems closely, and updates will be provided to customers in these supply zones.
Gauteng Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development MEC Lebogang Maile is visiting Deepkloof Hostel in Soweto this morning. This after residents embarked on a protest against the poor state of the hostel and other service delivery challenges. The MEC's visit is to solicit an understanding of the concerns raised by the hostel dwellers. Yesterday, residents barricaded roads with burning tires and stones. However, police intervened and calm has since been restored. No one was arrested. Residents have vowed to resume their protest if their concerns are not attended to. The MEC spokesperson is Castro Ngobese.
The ANC-led administration, under the able leadership of Premier Banyaza Lesotho, has prioritized hostel refurbishments and the transformation of these into family units in line with its township informal settlement and hostels program called TISH.
The bail application of 5 of the 7 accused linked to the murders of rapper Kinan aka Forbes and Dibello Tips Motswane continues today before the Durban Magistrates Court. At least 2 of the accused have told the court that they were assaulted by police and forced into confessing to the murders. Forbes and Motswane were killed in Florida Road in Durban last year. Nonjabulo Mtungwa Makamo reports.
Yesterday, one of the accused, Lindelani Demande, told the court that his life and those of his 2 co-accused who are currently detained in Eswatini are at risk. Demande further claimed that members of the SAPS unit, the National Intervention Unit, threatened to kill his family if they did not cooperate with the investigations on his whereabouts. Meanwhile, the NPA is still awaiting the finalization of the extradition process of the 2 suspects in Eswatini. For SABC News, I'm Nonjabulo Mtungwa Makamo in Durban.
And finally, a lawyer for R. Kelly's has struggled to convince a U.S. appeals court to overturn the former R&B star's sex trafficking conviction and a 30-year prison sentence. Kelly is appealing his September 2021 conviction by a Brooklyn, New York jury on all 9 charges he faced. This includes racketeering and 8 counts of violating the Mann Act, which forbids transporting people across state lines for prostitution. Recapping your top story, the ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 8:30.
A very good morning to you. In your Sunrise Sport, rugby, the Bulls hit the road again while the Stormers enjoy URC home comforts. And in soccer, Little Messi fans get a 50% refund after the Hong Kong match fiasco. Stay tuned for the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy in the Midrand area this morning, particularly the old Joburg Road, Olifantsfontein, Pretoria Main Road, Olifantsfontein, that sort of side, the eastern side of the N1. There's a lot of roadworks going on and there's multiple traffic light faults in that area as well. So if you're southbound on the 101 coming from Centurion, or you're coming in on Olifantsfontein, the 562 from Clayville, or moving from Blue Hills through Savannah Hills down towards the N1 on that section of Olifantsfontein, it's heavily backed up. That section of Olifantsfontein into the N1 and then across the N1 down towards Old Joburg. Lots of traffic there. Pretty busy getting into Sandton as well, particularly Rivonia Road coming through Morningside. Grayston at Daisy, no lights there, so there's a queue. Ballyclare, William Mandela onto Sandton Drive, all very busy. Durban's N2 remains a heavy one this morning from just after the cement factory. You're going to sit right through the works area. That is noticeably busier than it normally would be for this time of morning. Cape Town, the N7 going north out of Goodwood, a crash at the N1 if you're on your way towards Bosmansdam Road, that's heavy. And the big story is the closure of the N1 out towards Paarl. the road is shut between the Klippevel and Clubmots exits. There's a major delay of traffic on the N1 highway from Brackenfell, Kraaifontein, as you line up to make your way through to that closure at Klippevel Road. The Klippevel Road Bridge is heavily backed up. Our advice is you come off around Brackenfell and get onto the R101 as early as you can, just to avoid the highway backlog. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're along with us this morning. Well, obviously the focus once again on KwaZulu-Natal ahead of the elections and the sort of tensions that seem to be rising. Still struck by what Professor Musa Kulu told us about how the leader of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, he says, Siboniso Duma, knew through social media that Thulasizwe Buthelezi, the traditional prime minister, and of course does come from the IFP, was going to make a political comment, and that's one of the reasons he sort of yanked the microphone away from him. Well, we'll see. We are expecting those press conferences from the ANC today. We are expecting the Amabuto regiments to respond at some point as well. Then the other big story this morning is, Leander's been telling you, the situation in the electoral court. They'll be meeting in Mangaung today, talking there, of course, about this dispute between MK, Umkhonto weSizwe, and the ANC over the registration of MK. We'll watch how that plays out. More coverage of that for you through the day. Lots to come. We'll talk about judges, the Constitutional Court, and retired judges in just a moment. And then we'll look at fatigue and sleep. All of that to come.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Sikhla Zikalala is proud to announce that the country will host Africa's largest sustainable infrastructure development symposiums, SIDSA, from the 17th to the 19th of March at the Cape Town International Convention Centre, where President Cyril Ramaphosa will also deliver a keynote address. SIDSA highlights include the showcasing of progress on South Africa's infrastructure investment plan as adopted by Cabinet, unveiling of a pipeline of top 12 infrastructure priorities for project preparation and funding for the 2024-2025 financial year, the launch of South Africa's construction book, as well as the new international partnerships and cooperations, brought to you by Infrastructure South Africa, an entity of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the South African government, leaving no one behind.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, there's been a little bit of a discussion, almost controversy, not quite at controversy level, or maybe, around the Constitutional Court's decision to use retired judges to help them provide a sort of support service. In other words, as I understand it, what happened is there's been a huge increase in the number of cases that Constitutional Court judges have to deal with. As a result of this, the workload has grown. There's been no addition to judges. And so former judges or retired judges were called in to read memoranda, look at applications, and basically play a role in deciding which ones go forward, although I think at no time did they decide the outcome of cases. Now, the Chief Justice, the Office of the Chief Justice, has announced that this practice will actually stop. Dan Mafora is a senior researcher at the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
This was a slightly strange practice. The first reports from Sunday World were that former judge, retired judge, Zak Yaqub would be involved in looking at these cases. Was this always a bit difficult, a bit problematic?
It was always problematic. First, because Judge Yaqub and Judge Froneman, which are the two judges that the Chief Justice said had provided this service, are former judges of the Constitutional Court who have finished their non-renewable 12-year terms. And so they were brought back to provide an advisory service to the serving justices of the Constitutional Court. The difficulty with that is that in providing this service, they would read these applications, prepare memoranda, and kind of give a recommendation as to whether or not a case should be heard. Now, that for us raised alarm bells, because that to us seems to be the work that should be done by the serving justices of the court, because ultimately it affects whether or not a case is going to be heard. And so we raise this as a concern to say this is not a role that the Constitution envisages for anyone but serving justices of the Constitutional Court.
Was part of the issue that it seemed to be happening before anyone knew about it, and there's a sort of transparency issue here in a way?
Absolutely. So there wasn't, as far as we can tell, a process that was open to the public, that the public could have had input in before this measure was put into place. We obviously heard of it for the first time from the reports in the Sunday World. And so that was also one of the concerns, that this is happening in the background without any kind of announcement, even when the process had already begun, or the practice had already begun. And so that was also a concern for us.
The fact that they've dropped it so quickly, I mean, this is an unfortunate position, but it happens. You know, someone does something, there's a huge outcry, people drop it, and then, you know, you have to ask the question, well, why did you do it in the first place if you weren't sure of it? But we're glad you dropped it.
That's correct. The lack of transparency, I think, contributed, right? So if we had known, or the public had known at the inception of this practice, we might have raised our concerns then, and then they wouldn't have had to cancel it in the way that they've done now, once we had raised our concerns. And I think that just shows how important it is for these very constitutionally sensitive decisions should always be open to the public for public scrutiny.
There's another issue, though, and I wonder if this is sort of important, and so the issue is going to keep coming back. It would seem that from what the Office of the Chief Justice says and from what the court says, there may be a legitimate need for more support, and that's because, and I remember when this happened, almost over 10 years ago now, that the jurisdiction of the court was changed. When it started, it was really just to hear constitutional issues. It wasn't the sort of highest court on any other case. And as a result, that means that the judges are certainly hearing more cases, and you can see that. There are a lot more cases coming through than was the case 15 years ago, and it's the same number of judges.
There absolutely is a legitimate need and a legitimate concern about the workload of the court. Our suggestion has always been that the court should, and like other courts, other supreme and other constitutional courts around the world, have a dedicated registry of experienced legal professionals who vet these cases and are under the control of the justices of the Constitutional Court. That our court currently doesn't have that. What they have is that each judge has two law clerks who perform this function, but obviously two law clerks can only do so much, and they have other work outside of preparing memoranda or assessing new applications. So our position has always been that this model that we have is an anomaly when you look at other apex courts, and that the court needs a dedicated service of experienced legal practitioners who are going to assess new applications, provide memoranda to judges, but still be under the control of judges. What this measure lacks, in our view, is the fact that the two justices, or these retired justices who were offering the service, were not under the control. They were completely independent from the control of the serving justices, and secondly, have a lot of intellectual heft, right? So these are very experienced, very respected judges who may, in the end, be able to influence the decisions that the other serving justices are able to reach in the end. And that for us is a concern about the independence of the judicial independence of the serving justices.
There are other issues around judges at the moment, and in particular, we see more and more attacks on judges. Judges in the electoral court will have to make a difficult decision. The hearing is today around the use of the use of MK in the name Umkhonto we Sizwe. They're going to get dragged into the political fray, I think, in this election, perhaps more than any other. And we've seen some drama before elections before. I think it might just be a little bit worse this time.
Absolutely. I myself am quite nervous about this case, in particular, just given how how heated this election already is before, and like we're like 10 weeks or 9 weeks out from the election. But yes, I think you're right that judges are going to become more and more entangled in ways that we haven't experienced before. But again, we should stand ready to defend the integrity of our judges and our judicial system. And I would hope that political parties will do the same, and not, kind of play into the hands of populists who want to delegitimize our constitutional system.
Dan Mafora, thank you. Senior researcher at KSAC. Really appreciate the time. 18 after 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
George on the line from Kimberley. Hi. The situation in KwaZulu-Natal. George, go for it.
How are you, Tibobo?
Yeah, I'm well. Good.
Good morning to the listeners also. Tibobo, the chairperson of the ANC was quite right to take that mic away from the Prime Minister of the Zoo. Yes, he was in his right mind to take that microphone, because he was going to say wrong things on a government event. It's not a political event. He was quite right, and I applaud him for that, for what he did.
Sure. All right. So you say he did the right thing.
He do the right thing. All
right.
He do right. I applaud him for that. He was a brave man to do that.
George and Kimberley, thank you. And Mbayiswa on the line now from Peter Maritzburg. And Mbayiswa, hi. Do you think Duma did the right thing, Sibonisa Duma?
You know what, Stephen? What Duma did was suicidal.
Was what? Sorry, Mbayiswa, as loudly as you can.
Was politically suicidal.
Oh, yes.
Because Buthelezi achieved, Reverend Buthelezi achieved his goals. And if what Professor Kulu, if it's something to go by, what he said is something to go by, it means that Buthelezi himself, Reverend Buthelezi, have achieved his goal. What Duma did, look, here we are dealing with someone that we know that is mischievous.
Mm-hmm.
He is known for all wrong reasons, especially when coming to the administration of the ANC in KZA. And Buthelezi, he may have been wrong. Don't get me wrong, Stephen. Maybe the Reverend Buthelezi was not supposed to mention all those things there. But we need to know that if it was Chief Mangosi Buthelezi who said that, they wouldn't be. Chief Buthelezi have said many things. The
late Prince, yeah.
The late Prince have said many things in gathering like this.
Mm-hmm.
The ANC have never done anything. But for Duma, I think he was supposed to think that his political boss is there, his king is there. I mean, for us, as a Zulu man, I can tell you now, they can save their podium, they can protect their podium. We are going to vote for the IFP.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Simply because that we can't. I mean, it was hooliganism. We are going to take the province. Even. I mean, I used to vote for the ANC. I can't vote for. I've been complaining about the administration of the ANC.
Yeah.
They are not doing things right. I mean, Duma himself. I mean, he's treating Nomsa Dube the same way that he treated Buthelezi. I mean, whenever he speaks, that guy is spit venom. I mean, Mutolo, he was inciting Ramaphosa not so long ago, before conference. Now he's the chief Ankole. He's now Ramaphosa. Why? It's because people now, they are just desperate for their job, because they know that ANC is not coming back. I'm telling you, ANC is not coming back. The ANC is coming.
All right, and Mbayiswa, thank you. On the line from Peter Maritzburg. Look, there are strong views on this, and you would expect there to be strong views on this. We're going into an election. Some of the issues that we're talking about go back many, many years, generations, actually. And at the bottom of it really is how we have an election in a peaceful way. It's really the story of SAFM. It's how we talk to each other and try and convince each other and convince people to change their minds and change their votes one way or another, whatever it is, in a peaceful way. That's the point, really, is to have conversations, discussions, negotiations, discourse, engagement, whatever word you want to put it to it. And it's to do that peacefully, I think, is really where we're going with this. And look, I have to say, I do not expect that this will be the biggest or most concerning event that we'll see. The trick is to just, take your time, think about it, and take a minute. And in the end, let's be proud of ourselves for having a peaceful election. I think that is what will happen. We will be proud of ourselves for having a peaceful election. 23 after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
So your mediated conversation in a few minutes is going to be about exhaustion and fatigue. But I wonder sometimes if, as you and I go through life together, you sort of look at things and you're not entirely sure why you're feeling so grumpy or so cross or so angry, sometimes just lonely or colds that keep coming, or your blood pressure is going up, or you just can't lose the weight that you want to lose. And it may be that you're actually not getting enough sleep. Linda Pretorius is the content editor at the Bekasisa Centre for Health Journalism. Belinda, good morning, and thanks very much indeed for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me on your show.
You suggest that actually more and more of us are finding we just don't get enough sleep. And I thought it was just a stage of life thing. You get to very early middle age, Linda, and you start to think, well, maybe you're just not getting enough sleep. But I think this is becoming a more common problem.
Yes, Stephen, research shows that across the world, and it doesn't matter in which situation you are, whether you live in a high-income country or a poorer country, people aren't getting enough sleep. We're not, and it's not only that we're not getting enough sleep, but we're also not sleeping well. So you might be getting the hours, but during those hours you might be waking up often, so your quality of sleep is not good. And that has a whole range of effects on your health.
For years, people have said, for hundreds of years, people have said, no, life is speeding up, that's why we're not getting enough sleep, or that they've said that, the world is changing, that's why we're not getting enough sleep. Has something changed in the last 20 years, do you think?
I don't know if I'm well placed to answer whether life has changed so much that we're not getting enough sleep. But things like screen time, always being on, never switching off, those are definitely things that can affect how much we sleep and how well we sleep. Also things like stress and worry about life, that also affects whether we sleep or not.
I think the thing about cell phones next to your bed is a problem. Now, I do keep my cell phone next to my bed. I put it on a sort of low power setting, so it's got a dark screen and all the rest. And I have it there just in case someone phones in case of an emergency. I know there's all sorts of issues around that. But it also means it's often the last thing I look to when I go to bed. Now, how important is sort of having a sleep routine before going to bed? For some people, it's having a quick shower, or for some people, it's doing something else, or reading a novel or something. How important is that?
The thing with sleep is that you have to get the right kind and amount of sleep that is right for you. So many textbooks would say that you need, say, 7 to 8 hours of sleep or something like that. But as long as you wake up refreshed and rested in the morning and you don't feel tired during the day, then you're getting good sleep. So whatever you do to make you feel like that in the morning, that is good for you.
And that can mean then, making sure you sleep long enough, going to bed at the right time, and then also making sure you have, I think, what experts call sleep pressure. You do some exercise or something during the day so you can go to sleep.
Yeah, and that is often also the problem if you get into that cycle. Sleep is a stage when your body replenishes and recovers from the day. And it's not only your mind that has to switch off, or your brain that has to rest. It's your whole body. And so all your hormone systems, your immune functions, your heart, it's a whole body thing that has to that you have to rest. And if you don't give your body enough time to rest and recover, then all those other systems kind of go out of whack. And that's when we start getting problems. And then the one feeds into the other. So that's why there's a link between, or where we see a link between, say, putting on weight and poor sleep, because your body isn't working the way it should. It doesn't have the time to recover as it should. And then things go out of whack. So And the more sluggish you feel, the more you try to do things to not make you feel sluggish, but those are often things that are not good for you. So you eat lots of carbs or drink energy drinks or something just to get you through the day, and that starts a vicious cycle.
Linda Pretorius, thank you. The content editor at Becca Cisa. More on sleep in a few minutes, 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Nothing disrupts sleep like travel. The Bulls are about to find that out.
Exactly, and they want to steal the top spot while they're at it after a 2-week hiatus due to the Six Nations tournament. The Bulls are getting back into the thick of things in the United Rugby Championship. This Saturday, they're set to face a challenging match against the Dragons in Newport, Wales. It's a crucial game for the team as they look to maintain their momentum in the league. Meanwhile, back home, the Stormers are soaking up the comforts of home advantage as they prepare for their own URC clash this weekend with Edinburgh at Cape Town Stadium. The team is looking to capitalise on home ground support to clinch a victory that could boost their standings in the league. The Bulls are currently in second place with 40 points from 11 matches, while the Stormers are in ninth position with 30 points with the same number of matches. Both teams at a critical juncture in the season, and this weekend's matches could be pivotal in determining their positions as the URC progresses. Soccer news: fans of Lionel Messi are set for a partial compensation following a disappointment in Hong Kong. Attendees who purchased tickets anticipated the football legend's appearance in a friendly match were left disheartened as Messi remained sidelined. Now, in a response to the upset, organisers have decided to offer a 50% refund to those affected. Now, this move comes as a gesture of goodwill towards fans, many of whom travelled significant distances for a glimpse of the star in action. Closer to home, the Absa Cape Epic, a premier mountain biking stage race, has seen fierce competition in its early stages. The Buff Magamo's Hans Becking and Wout Alman clinched a narrow victory in stage 1, narrowly outpacing their rivals despite mechanical failures and issues. Nico Schurter and Sebastian Feeney retained the overall lead. But here's Wout Alman.
We didn't have time to make a plan because it was super fast in the final, and I wanted to be in the first position when we come here in the final straight, but Nino passed me in the end, and I just tried to be as fast as possible at the finish line, and then Hans was behind me, so it was up to Hans. But when I looked behind and I saw that Hans was in front of Fini, I was just super happy. It's
in the women's category, it's Ghost Factory Racing's Anne Terpstra and Nicole Collar edging out their competitors to secure a win as well as maintaining their overall lead. That's where we leave it for now. More sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The sense of fatigue, where does it come from? That's next. You're with SAFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the ANC Provincial Secretary in KwaZulu-Natal, Bheki Mtolo, says the party will request an audience with Amazulu King, Misuzulu Kazwelithini, and apologize for what transpired over the weekend. This after a controversial row erupted between ANC Provincial Chairperson Siboniso Duma and the Zulu Traditional Prime Minister, Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi. Communication Workers Union CWU has called on Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications to intervene in a wage dispute with the SABC. The union is threatening a full-blown strike at the public broadcaster that will impact the coverage of the upcoming general elections. And the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services has confirmed that an extradition application for the two men linked to the murder of Kinan aka Forbes and Tebello Tips Mutswani has been approved and sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions in Eswatini. Last month, the alleged suspects, Siabonga and Melus Ndimande, were arrested by the Eswatini police. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Still very heavy into Santa this morning, particularly coming in from the north. Routes like Ballyclare, like Rivonia, like Bowling Avenue. Those routes coming in from Bryanston down through Morningside and sort of from Woodmead territory, all very busy. That extends to Marlborough Drive, South Road into the Morningside area as well. Randburg's Republic Road out to Winnie Mandela on your way to Sandton, that's heavy. And there's a backlog on Jan Smuts having left Randburg, heading through Craighall and Blairgowrie. Also some load shedding moving into the Parktown North and Parkwood areas. So just coming through from Victory Park in Linden on your way through to Rosebank. There's some very heavy backlogging going on there as well today. N1 South, Brackfontein and New Road stays very unusually heavy backed up for this time of the morning. Same with Durban's N2. That's really struggling along from the M7 up through Spaghetti Junction into the work zone. Cape Town, the N1 out of town remains closed. There's been a big crash between the Klipphebel and Klapmuts exits. That section is closed towards Paarl. The queue on the highway is substantial. It's right back to sort of Okavango Road territory in Brackenfell. You'd want to come off at Brackenfell, Bellville, and just hop onto the R101, go out through sort of Scottsdene and Kryfontein and just beat the N1 highway snarl up. There's also a lot of traffic to the north, interestingly, 312 through Fasantacral. It looks like some motorists taking back roads to beat that N1 closure. And the N7 from Goodwood is backlogging. If you're on your way up towards the Bosmansdam Road, collision seen at the N1 blocking the left lane, queues back towards Milton Road, Milton Street and Goodwood. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. So, how are you feeling at the moment? I don't know about you, but so many people have said to me they're feeling quite fatigued, quite tired, quite exhausted, even though it really is very early in the year. And I have to tell you, from time to time I felt it as well and wondered why we're all feeling in this way right now. And there could be many causes. There's the elections and the screaming and the shouting of political parties. I think that's exhausting. Underneath that, I think, is maybe something else. That maybe we're feeling a little bit more anxious than we have in the past. And I think sometimes we forget how serious and important the pandemic was and the longer-term impact it has had on us. Place the uncertainty on top of that, maybe we're getting somewhere. But how do you regain your energy during this time is one of the questions. And then there's a series of long weekends coming up. I wonder if that will make any difference. First this morning, why are we feeling tired? Anela Siswana is a clinical psychologist who's been looking at this. Then the issue of sleep. Will we get enough sleep? Dr. Alison Bentley is an expert on sleep and sleep disorder opinion leader responsible for sleep testing and reporting for Aero Integrated Healthcare. And then, does shutting yourself away from everything that's going on around you help? Solly Mweng is a commentator and a reputation strategist. He'll have a look at that. We start then with the psychologist, Anela Siswana. Anela, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Are there times when groups of people, and I suppose an entire nation of South Africans in this case, when we can all just feel, bleh, tired? Is there such a thing as saying everyone just feels tired? It's all the same for everyone.
Yeah, it's a common phenomenon. I mean, myself as a psychologist, I am very exhausted. On one end, we can look at this as an individual experience where one feels this sense of fatigue or exhaustion. At the same time, we can look at the construct of collective fatigue. So at an individual level, we can look at this sense of fatigue as both a sign and a symptom. As a sign, there could be an indication of an underlying condition such as burnout, stress, or illness, or even sleep deprivation to that matter. At the same time, as a symptom, it's experienced by individuals which can manifest then physically and mentally, this lack of energy and lack of just keep on going. And I think what you alluded to, at a sense of collective fatigue, the sense is that we share a common sense of shared fatigue, shared tiredness, shared anxiety. I mean, there's a lot of political upheavals, there's a lot of uncertainty, and obviously we can't take away the impact of the COVID-19, which had a lot of emotional strain on individuals and to us as a country. And since then, I don't think we've had had time and spent our energies in really unpacking what that moment was like for us, where things were just hard. I mean, a number of people lost their jobs. A number of people have been experiencing a high demand of work responsibilities at work. Chances are the rise of retrenchment has led to less staff capacity, and you see people now having to work a lot, so much trying to cover up for roles and responsibility that should be covered by other people. But there's this genuine sense where just everyone finds it hard to recover, to recoup, and ideally there isn't much time to spend on relaxing because economic demands are at the forefront. At the same time, politically, at a collective sense, there's this sense of uncertainty and just a lot of issues that are happening politically.
And I suggested the pandemic at the beginning deliberately because whenever we try to talk about the pandemic on this show, we get no response. Are we creating a problem by not talking about it?
I think it raises a place of pain, and it raises a lot of emotions around it because there's so much that happened. I mean, on one end, we have a lot of unresolved collective grief. There were a lot of deaths, and that pain. There's a lot of uncertainty that happened as a result of that. And so whenever people feel pain and whenever there's so much distress around a particular time or incident, chances are you may choose to avoid it because it's painful. To a larger extent, you could use it as a defense mechanism. And I don't think it's that we don't want to talk about the impact of the COVID-19, but the impact of COVID-19 is so real and evident that it causes so much pain and leaves us wondering, would we ever really recover? So the question of, are we really not paying attention to it? I think one of the things that have made me see that there's been a great response, mental health in South Africa at the moment is at the core of our conversation, which really speaks to the idea of us really addressing and redressing what really happened at that time. So mental health conversations are one of the tools that aid our agency in talking about these difficult conversations.
The issue of anxiety around the future, and I think there's maybe a sense of fragility, which is linked to the pandemic, you know. These were things, this was the direction that things were going on. Things were, complicated, but okay. And that's all been, I kind of want to make a shaking sign to you on the radio, and I can't do that. But that's all been shaken. And I think the political shouting has maybe made that worse. I sometimes wonder if we do too much politics because of that. But, I mean, that anxiety, how big is, what impact does anxiety have on you?
I mean, anxiety, it takes away your capacity and agency to do. I mean, when you are anxious, by simple definition of anxiety is being worried about being worried and not being able to function. And automatically with anxiety, it affects your cognitions, it affects your physiological responses, it affects you emotionally. So you would find it hard to really function at your optimal level. And obviously, when clinical anxiety now present in one's life, it causes what we call significant impairment, where you discover that at work it affects you. You discover that in your day-to-day activities, life is not the same. This is now where it goes through the spectrum of having to see a GP or a psychiatrist that can then prescribe relevant medication that may help to deal with those cognitive, emotional, and physiological responses that are as a result of this anxiety. And we have seen, for some of us who are in private practice, anxiety and major depressive disorder become key common mental health disorders that people are struggling with. And this is where we have to do so much work around mental health education, mental health literacy, and psychoeducation about the importance of primary healthcare intervention that really helps people on managing and dealing with these symptoms much earlier before they can impair. And obviously mental health services in South Africa are quite expensive. So we really need to create effective social justice activities that are aided at creating access to mental health care services to address anxiety and major depression in South Africa.
And it's going to sound a bit silly, but to get your energy back to sort of deal with it, things like exercise, they help. I find it helps for me.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I am a big advocate of mental health interventions such as psychotherapy. It might not be with the private practice person, it might not be with the private psychiatrist, but I think our government and there are resources like SADC, like Panda, spaces where people can get access to mental health care services. And obviously at an individual level, one can exercise, people can try mindfulness, can try yoga, and many other non-alternative methods that are not necessarily that which we are prone to know, like therapy and some of these sophisticated modalities, but to regain and regroup in the state of where we are economically, where people are struggling to afford bare minimum. So where do you get the time to rest when there's so much activity around you that requires you to be able to buy a simple thing as bread? So our current psychosocial factors and economic state and politically that what's happening, it makes it hard to really look at what rest could look like. And I suppose with these long holidays that are coming, perhaps we may reconfigure what it means to rest, what it means to recuperate, what it means to spend time with family, because with everything else and the energy around, parents are not available for their kids and things are just hard. So we need an integrative approach and alternative methods of engaging with ways of how we can redefine what it means to be relaxing or taking time out.
And Nelis Siswana, thank you. Clinical psychologist, really appreciate it. Starting us off for your mediated conversation this morning here on SFM, 17 minutes to 9. Continuing around the feeling of fatigue or tiredness, exhaustion that people have. Dr. Alison Bentley is an expert on sleep. Dr. Bentley, good morning. Thanks for your time. It seems obvious to say this, but if you're not sleeping well, you're going to feel tired all the time.
Yep, that's basically how it works. It is simple, but I think it's really important to think about the type of fatigue that people have, because I get people coming to tell me that they're tired, so they must have a sleep problem. And I kind of go, well, there's different levels of tiredness and different types of tiredness. I mean, the kind of tiredness you feel after you've run a marathon is very different to sleepiness that you might have during the day. So it is important to differentiate what kind of fatigue you have. Mental fatigue because you've been studying for exams, for example. But if you're complaining of sleepiness during the day, then that's a whole different issue. That's not just fatigue. It's not because of business stress or anything like that. It's because you are sleepy. And you need to get some more sleep, either more hours or you need to get a better quality of sleep.
Can you be tired because you're not sleeping properly and you don't know that you're not sleeping properly? In other words, that's why someone will come to you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think people who wake up in the morning, who have the kind of hours of sleep that they need, but they wake up tired in the morning and are then tired for the rest of the day, often will blame that on it's business stress, or I'm doing this, or I'm exercising too hard, or something like that. Bottom line is you should wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. That's the key thing. And if you don't wake up feeling refreshed, there's a good chance that actually there's something going on in your sleep destroying the quality of your sleep, and that's why you're tired during the day.
So you say someone should wake up at, let's just say, 5:30, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning and feel refreshed. I don't think that's most of our lived experience.
I didn't say at 5 o'clock. I didn't say at 5 o'clock or 5:30.
Sure.
No, I didn't. Because I think everybody has their kind of sweet spot to wake up, and it's not the same for everybody. 5:30 is a horrible time for me to wake up. A great time for me to wake up is 6:45. That's a great time. I feel refreshed, I feel good, and I'm ready to go. But there are larks and owls, so people who want to go to bed at 9 o'clock and wake up at 5, and they do feel super refreshed at 5. I can't fall asleep until 11, 11:30, and then I'd prefer to wake up at 7-ish. So it does depend entirely on what time you are designed to wake up, and I use that very deliberately because it's kind of a genetic, biological thing, like when you're designed to wake up.
I was going to say, so the world of offices and work and factories has created a situation where half of us are waking up too early. But actually, schools are the ones that have that power because they really set the times for society. So if we created a situation unnecessarily where probably half the population are getting up too early.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly, the children are battling at school as well, particularly in high school, because in high school everybody gets a 1 hour delay in their sleep, so it just shifts by an hour. And I'm saying everybody, like the entire planet, that age, kind of 14 to 17 age group, and they've done studies where they've taken entire schools, high schools, shifted them back an hour, so they start an hour later, and everything ends up an hour later. And within, one term, they find behavior starts improving, marks are starting to improve, there's more engagement with the learning. And it all ended because parents went, no, we can't manage those times. It's got to come back to the time. So you're right, schools kind of created that construct, but then business and life has then hatched onto that. So unless the entire industry moves by an hour later, then we're always going to be a little out of sync. But it's also about traveling. I mean, people are traveling extraordinary distances to get to work and waking up very early to catch taxis, for example, because they've got to catch 3 taxis to get to work. And then you can't just say to them, well, get work closer, because that's just not possible at the moment.
One of the other things that we've seen more recently in Gauteng, for example, is a long heat wave. Many people have said, I couldn't sleep because it's been too hot. Why can't you sleep when it's hot?
Well, we get woken up often when it's hot, and primarily we get woken up in REM sleep. Now, when you're in REM sleep or dreaming sleep, which happens about every 90 minutes through the night, so it's a very regular kind of sleep stage. It's a deep sleep, but we also lose a lot of our automatic controls, and I don't want to say lose them, but they just don't work as well. So, for example, our heart rate is more variable. That's how all the Fitbits work. Our heart rate is more variable during REM sleep. Our blood pressure is not as well controlled. So it's obviously controlled, otherwise we die, but it's not as well controlled. And the one thing is temperature as well. So I would say to patients that you've got to think about the fact that you're like a lizard when you're in REM sleep. Like, you don't have fantastic control over these things. So you don't have fantastic control over body temperature, and body temperature in a heat wave starts to rise. And that's when it wakes you up. So you get woken up often during the night. And then often you have to kind of get up, cool down, and by the time you've cooled down, you're kind of wide awake, and then it's harder to get back to sleep.
So it's easier to sleep during winter, is the short answer to that?
Not really. It's easier. I mean, when we do fall asleep, our body temperature does drop. So that's part of falling asleep, is a drop in body temperature. So they always do say that basically if your room is coolish and it allows that drop in body temperature, then you're likely to sleep better. If you're warm and that drop in body temperature doesn't happen, then a whole lot of things don't happen in sleep that are associated with that.
Is there a warning sign that maybe you have a sleeping issue, that your exhaustion is actually around that and you just don't know it? I mean, are there signs that you can look at that say you have sleep apnea or something?
So the destruction of the quality of sleep will present with sleepiness. So not just fatigue, but that feeling of I'm going to fall asleep. That is not normal fatigue anymore. That is a sleep disorder until proved otherwise. So sleepiness. However, patients with insomnia who are battling to get enough hours of sleep will not present with sleepiness. They'll present with fatigue. But that's an easier thing to understand. It's kind of like, I need 7 hours, I'm only getting 5. That's easier to understand than this quality problem, which you may sleep 7 hours, but then feel sleepy. And the key time you're going to feel sleepy is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that, the 2 o'clock slump should be just a little edge that goes from your function. It shouldn't be the slump that you're falling asleep at your desk. That's a really good sign something's going wrong.
Dr. Alison Bentley, thank you. Great pleasure. Really appreciate the time. Sleep disorder opinion leader, responsible for the sleep testing and reporting for the Aero Integrated Healthcare. Interesting to hear about all of this. In a moment, does cutting yourself off from the news flow help? 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very busy into Santa this morning. Noticeably, Rivonia Road coming from Rivonia down through Morningside. That stop-start all the way. South Road through Morningside towards Rivonia, and some traffic lights out as well on Bryce the Drive at Coleraine. So some additional delays there. Randburg's Republic Road, heavy out to Winnie Mandela, and the big hole at Blegauri, Craig Hall area, causing backlogs on Jan Smuts coming out of Randburg through towards Hyde Park. There's a really big backlog. Also some notice noticeable load shedding delays around Parktown, North Parkwood area this morning, particularly the run from Linden across in towards Rosebank, very slow. Pretoria's side eased up nicely. No major delays there. The N1 between Brockfontein and New Road stays busier, probably busier than you'd like. Just a heads up, Mhlanga Lalucia area, Armstrong Avenue has now been closed to and from the M4, just sort of north of the traffic circle there. It's closed for some, I believe it may be water work repairs, but it's going to be closed reasonably long term. Today's the first day that I've noticed it, so that is going to cut in and cause some problems locally around that La Lucia area. N2 going south, the breakdown before Spaghetti Junction still there. It's heavy backlogs from Gena roadside. Cape Town, the N1 out of town towards Paarl remains closed between Kliphoevel and the Clubmots exit due to a big crash scene. There's a very heavy delay. The N1 backs now to around about sort of Brackenfell Boulevard territory, all the way out through Kraaifontein, through Justenburg and towards that. Couple of options. One would be to travel later if you've got to go to Paarl, if you can't avoid it. The R101, get off the N1 at Belleville, at Brackenfell, hop onto the R101 as quickly as you can and take that alternative route through to Paarl and just bypass the major delay on the N1. Just staying in Cape Town, N2 inbound Langa through to Hospital Bend is busy, and Marine Drive and Kuberg Road, both of those options through Pardon Island into a busy N1 stay slow as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continuing a mediated conversation this morning around the issue of exhaustion and fatigue. Solly Moeng is a social commentator and a reputation strategist as well. Solly, good morning.
Hello, Stephen. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good
we
morning.
can.
And to your listeners.
So much happens in our society and the news flows so much quicker and bigger than it was 10 years ago. Could that be one of the reasons we're so tired? There's just so much information flowing at us all the time?
Yeah, I was quite fascinated by the psychological and clinical take on this matter. I don't blame, and I haven't had anyone blaming COVID-19 for their state. You know, John, what we're not talking about in South Africa, especially for the people in the middle class, is the pain that people are afraid to voice out in public. I don't know how many times I get calls from people who seem to be doing well, who are driving nice cars, they live in nice places, they're like quietly looking for another job, they're quietly looking for an opportunity to leave South Africa. They are worried about the cost of living, the rising cost of living, they're worried about the load shedding, the impact, especially for those who are running small businesses. There's a lot of stuff, uncertainty in the political, economic space in South Africa that's giving people a lot of tension. And the stress, you know, is a silent killer. People will tell you that. So we need to talk about why people are worried. What is causing all the uncertainty? It's not COVID. It's the political situation. It's the economic situation. It's the crime situation. It's the rising cost of living. Until we tackle those things for what they are, we're going to run around looking for causes elsewhere.
How do we cope with it all? I mean, how do we deal with so many things that seem to be going in the wrong direction? You know, how do we cope with? I mean, crime is very difficult and keeps you awake at night. Absolutely, it does. You hear a strange noise. The economy as well. You know, everybody's worried about just hanging on to what they have.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? Because you know, it's either when there's one or two or three things that are making all these things that are bringing all these things to your stoop. But when there are too many of them, it's almost like the country is like a bucket filled with water, not just a fully perforated bucket, not just one with two or three holes. And which one do you plug first? That's a problem. We have elections coming up. I think South Africans need to think really seriously about whether they want change or not, what kind of change they want. Each one of us must make our own decisions, but we must participate fully, actively in between elections in our country, do stuff, you know, demand the kind of things that we want. If you're a professional in engineering, medicine, or other profession, get involved with the professional body. Just be part of change. A lot of times we sit there and complain about stuff, and when suddenly all the mess comes to us too, we don't know what to do. We want to run away. So we really need to stand up as South Africans and be part of co-crafting the kind of country that we want.
Sometimes when people come to me and they want to talk about politics or something, they're very anxious. The more they know about it, the more they understand about it, the less scared people are. Is there something to that you actually, if you pay close attention, you start to understand why things are happening in certain ways, and that might help you feel a little less anxious?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, the expression connecting the dots is really important. A lot of times people don't connect the dots. So they keep running around in circles, but instead of informing themselves, as you say, they read more, understand more how things function, understand more the causality between different phenomena, activities, developments in the country, and find a way for yourself to be a part of crafting the solution. I think the more you understand the way things work, hopefully you can be a bit more relaxed about it. But when you see stuff as if the world is throwing also things in your direction and you have no idea why where they're coming from, how you're getting out of it, especially when you don't talk about it, that's a problem. People in the middle class don't want to talk about losing that BMW, Mercedes-Benz, the car, because they cannot keep up with the monthly payments. So they suffer in silence. And that creates a lot of stress and tensions in homes, in couples, in families.
I suppose the other question is you talk about getting involved and trying to sort of manage this. But also, if you play an active role in something, you kind of can see what's happening. I think other people just feel life is moving too quickly. You know, you go away for a weekend. The whole country might have changed that weekend.
That's very true. Look, sometimes people say too much information is dangerous, but too little information is also dangerous. You know, I think I prefer to know than not to know. If you're living if you're part of a group and, you know, the management of that group steals all the money, do you prefer not to know? When you see you can't afford certain things that are essential that you should be affording to pay for, you can't afford them. So you should be asking yourself, but where is the money going on? What's happening? And then you are able to understand the problem. Then you are able to see how you can be part of finding a solution for it. But if you don't know, you want to keep throwing stones and fists in all directions. It's better to know. Of course, we all need me time, self-time to get out from time to time out of a cauldron, as it were, so that we can breathe nature, be away, but come back. But coming back, being away from time to time doesn't mean that you shouldn't be part of wanting to know, informing yourself. The better people are the ones who know what's going on, so they can better deal with the problems and they can foresee things coming.
Do you think that maybe things will get a little better at some point? We'll start to feel a little easier. I don't know how or why, but it can't go on like this forever, can it?
No, it can't. But giving up is not an option, Stephen. We cannot give up. I think that we should keep trying, but what we should avoid doing is trying the same methods and tools and people over and over again while we expect different outcomes. It's time for change. Something has to give. Otherwise, you're going to find ourselves having the same conversation in a year's time.
Thank you very much indeed. Solly Moeng, social commentator, reputation management strategist as well. My thanks also in your mediated conversation today to Dr. Alison Bentley, the sleep expert, an expert on sleep disorders, and starting us off today, the clinical psychologist, Anele Seswana. Well, just an interesting conversation, already a little bit of feedback from people talking about how intriguing it is. And I suppose the question around exhaustion fatigue is one that is always with us. I don't know if there's ever been a time when people haven't felt tired. I think just the increasing levels of it of late, maybe going into the public holidays, there's a long weekend this weekend sort of, and next weekend might make us all feel a little better. All right, that's your lot from us. Kathy is next, from Mdu, from Stanza, from Melissa, from Mpo. Myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, the ANC KZN seeks audience with Amazulu monarch over events of the past weekend, and CWU wage dispute threatens SABC election coverage. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. The ANC Provincial Secretary in KwaZulu-Natal, Bheki Mtolo, says the party will request an audience with Amazulu King Misuzulu Kazwelithini and apologize for what transpired over the weekend. This after a controversial row erupted between ANC Provincial Chairperson Siboniso Duma and the Zulu Traditional Prime Minister Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi. The incident took place in full view of the public at the commemoration of King Dinuzulu at Kwaceza in northern KwaZulu-Natal. Mtolo says what happened is unfortunate.
What we are going to apologize to the king and to Amakosa Sendlunkulu and to the president is to apologize that reprimand, which was necessary and unavoidable, happened in a way that it was in front of the king, in front of the president. But I think another thing is that we're going to appeal to the king, we're going to appeal to Amakosa Sendlunkulu to take the traditional prime minister to an educational initiation, because if it continues to other events, unfortunately, the circumstances of Kwaceza may repeat themselves.
Meanwhile, IFP spokesperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa says previous utterances by some of the ANC leaders in the province, including Siboniso Duma, show that they lack respect for the throne.
There will be no way forward in this matter if Mr. Duma does not withdraw his utterances that disregard the decision of His Majesty, because he keeps saying he doesn't accept that Reverend Thulasizwe Buthelezi was given the role of AmaZulu Prime Minister. Why His Majesty the King's decision being questioned? His behavior shows that he does not respect His Majesty's decision.
In some election news now, the ANC is expected to head to the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein today to challenge the registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. The ANC argues that there were procedural flaws in the way the party was registered by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Mawethu Mosri. It contends that the MK Party was supposed to launch a fresh application and not supplement the original and initial application, which was rejected by Mosri. Legal analyst is Ritumezi Phiri.
One of the reasons that it's going to be difficult for the ANC is that it didn't make proper use of the appeal mechanisms and the objection mechanisms in the Electoral Commission Act. It didn't object to Umkhonto weSizwe's application to be registered as a political party when it had the ability to do so. When it did eventually belatedly object, the objection was actually dismissed as being irregular. It also did not appeal the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe timelessly and when it should have done so. And this is particularly problematic because in this way it could be argued that the ANC has actually given up its right to challenge the registration of Umkhonto weSizwe as a political party.
The Communication Workers Union CWU has called on Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications to intervene in a wage dispute with the SABC. The union is threatening a full-blown wage strike at the public broadcaster that will impact the coverage of the upcoming general elections. The parties are at a deadlock after a series of failed negotiations, as the union says it is willing to accept the 6% offer but insists on it being backdated to April last year. CWU's National Bargaining Coordinator Nathan Bowers says they've received the strike certificate and will meet with the workers tomorrow to determine the way forward.
If CW goes on strike in the next couple of days, it will hamper this general elections campaign that's in full swing now. So, and we sympathize with the public of South Africa. It is not that workers are deliberate, but if workers are not afforded an increase over 3 years and then demand the backdate and we are treated like that by the SABC workers have no alternative but to bring the SABC to its knees in this election campaign.
Residents of Diepkloof Hostel in Soweto say they do not want empty promises from the visit by Gauteng Human Settlements and Infrastructure Development MEC Lebogang Maile. Maile is visiting the hostel this morning following yesterday's protest by hostel residents. Residents barricaded roads with burning tires and rocks. They were protesting over the dilapidated state of the hostel and other service delivery challenges. They say they've been raising their concerns with the office of the Gauteng Premier but without any success. One of the hostel community leaders, Sanel MCB, says they want commitments with time frames.
Let the MEC tell us when and what time we'll start demolishing and build the hostel. That's what we want. On this date or this month, I'm going to